What happens when the one person who could save everyone is the one they chose to destroy? When a brilliant survival analyst predicts a catastrophic super freeze that could wipe out an entire frontier wolf pack, she's not hailed as a hero. She's framed, humiliated, and exiled into the killing cold. But when the ice closes in and the pack begins to die, the woman they called paranoid becomes their only hope. This is a story of brutal betrayal, impossible survival, and a choice that will redefine what it means to be loyal. Stay until the end to see how she makes them all pay. And don't forget to hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. You won't believe how this ends. The wind had teeth. That was the first thing anyone learned about the northern frontier. The wind didn't just blow, it bit. It clawed through fur and flesh alike, searching for weakness, punishing the unprepared. But tonight, as Rowan Vance stood at the edge of the observation platform jutting out from Iron Peak Stronghold, the wind felt different. It felt wrong. She pressed her gloved hand against the frozen railing, her breath misting in the sub-zero air. Below her, the valley sprawled in jagged white waves, endless snowfields broken only by clusters of black spruce and the occasional rocky outcrop. Beautiful. Deadly. Home. But something in that beauty had shifted. Rowan pulled out her field journal, flipping to the page where she'd been tracking atmospheric patterns for the past 6 weeks. The numbers didn't lie. Barometric pressure dropping faster than any recorded winter. Migratory patterns completely scrambled. Caribou herds abandoning their routes weeks early, birds fleeing south in panicked flocks, even the wolves in the outer territories pulling back toward warmer ground. And the ice. God, the ice. She'd seen it forming in places it had no business being, creeping across riverbeds that should have been flowing, encasing trees in crystalline tombs overnight. The kind of ice that didn't melt when spring came because it wasn't born of normal winter. It was born of something deeper, older, more dangerous. A super freeze. The term felt almost quaint for what was coming. Her research, cross-referenced against historical climate records and indigenous survival logs dating back 2 centuries, pointed to a pattern, a cycle. Every 112 years, give or take, the frontier experienced a winter that wasn't just harsh, it was apocalyptic. Temperatures dropping so low that exposed skin would freeze solid in under a minute, winds strong enough to tear buildings apart. Snowfall measured not in feet but in stories. The last one had killed nearly 70% of the population across 3 territories, and the signs said another was coming, soon, possibly within days. Rowan snapped her journal shut and turned toward the stronghold. Iron Peak rose like a fortress from the mountainside, all reinforced stone and timber designed to withstand the frontier's worst. It was home to the Thornridge Pack, one of the most powerful wolf packs in the northern territories, over 300 members strong, wealthy from mining and trade, and led by one of the youngest alpha kings in history. Cale Thorne. Just thinking his name made her jaw tighten. 28 years old, crowned 2 years ago when his father died in a hunting accident. Handsome, charismatic, strong, all the qualities a pack wanted in their leader. But being strong and being wise were 2 very different things, and in Rowan's assessment, Cale Thorne was dangerously short on the latter, especially since he'd taken Seraphine Ashford as his mate. Rowan pushed through the heavy doors into the stronghold's main hall. Warmth hit her immediately. The massive fireplaces blazing, the scent of roasted meat and pine, the rumble of conversation and laughter. Pack members lounged at long tables, playing cards, sharing stories, living in blissful ignorance of what was bearing down on them. She spotted her target immediately. Marcus Thane, the pack's head of security, sat near the central fire with a group of enforcers. Big man, scarred face, 20 years of frontier survival etched into every line of his weathered features. If anyone would listen, it would be him. Marcus, Rowan approached, setting her journal on the table. We need to talk, now. He looked up, one eyebrow raised. Rowan, always a pleasure. What's got you worked up this time? Find another critical flaw in our winter stores? A few enforcers chuckled. Rowan ignored them. I need to speak to the council, tonight. The atmospheric data is conclusive. We're looking at a super freeze event potentially within 72 hours. We need to implement emergency protocols immediately. Marcus sighed, setting down his cards. Rowan, we've been through this. You've been predicting disaster for 6 weeks. The weather's cold, yeah, But it's winter. That's what happens up here. This isn't normal winter variation, Marcus. Look at the data. I'm not a scientist, kid. I'm a soldier. And what I see is a pack that's well-fed, well-armed, and well-protected. We've survived 100 winters in this stronghold. We'll survive this one. Not this one. Rowan leaned forward, her voice dropping to something harder, sharper. 112 years ago, a super freeze hit 3 territories simultaneously. The death toll was catastrophic. Entire packs wiped out. Survivors resorted to cannibalism. This isn't theoretical. It's documented, and every single indicator says it's happening again. Marcus studied her for a long moment. Despite his dismissive words, Rowan knew he wasn't stupid. He'd lived through enough to recognize genuine concern when he saw it. Fine, he said finally. I'll arrange a council meeting, tomorrow evening. Tomorrow might be too late. It's the best I can do. The Alpha's hosting a mate bonding ceremony tonight for his inner circle. He won't appreciate the interruption, and neither will Seraphine. Rowan's hands curled into fists. Of course, a party. While the frontier prepared to freeze them all to death, Cale Thorne was throwing a party. Fine, tomorrow. But if this thing hits before then we'll deal with it like we deal with everything else, Marcus interrupted. Together, as a pack. Rowan wanted to scream. Instead, she grabbed her journal and walked away, fighting the urge to throw something. The Great Hall was decorated for the ceremony. Flowers in winter. An absurd expense shipped in from the Southern Territories, arranged in elaborate displays around a central platform where Cale and Seraphine would preside over the bonding of 3 young couples. Music played, people danced, the whole scene was grotesquely cheerful. And there, in the center of it all, stood the Alpha King and his mate. Cale Thorne was everything an alpha was supposed to look like. Tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of commanding presence that made people instinctively straighten when he entered a room. Dark hair, strong jaw, eyes like winter steel. He wore his authority comfortably, a man who'd never had to fight for respect because it had been granted to him by birthright. Beside him, Seraphine Ashford was a study in calculated perfection. Beautiful, certainly. Pale skin, raven hair, features so precisely arranged they seemed almost sculptural, but it was the intelligence in her eyes that made her dangerous. Seraphine wasn't just the Alpha's mate. She was his primary advisor, his strategist, the voice whispering in his ear during every major decision. And she hated Rowan. The feeling was mutual. "Rowan!" A voice cut through her thoughts. Turning, she found Elena Voss approaching, one of the few people in the pack Rowan actually considered a friend. Elena worked in logistics, managing the supply chains that kept the stronghold running. Smart, practical, and refreshingly blunt. "Please tell me you're not going to make a scene tonight," Elena said, her tone half joking, half serious. "I'm trying to save lives, Elena. If that's making a scene, I know. And for what it's worth, I think you're right. The numbers don't lie. But timing matters. You interrupt tonight's ceremony with doom predictions, and Seraphine will eviscerate you, politically speaking." "I don't care about politics." "That's your problem." Elena grabbed Rowan's arm, pulling her toward a quieter corner. "Listen to me. Seraphine has been systematically undermining you for months. Every report you submit, every recommendation you make, she finds a way to make it sound paranoid or alarmist. She's turned half this council against you." "Why?" Rowan demanded. "What did I ever do to her?" Elena gave her a pitying look. "You don't get it, do you? Seraphine sees you as a threat. You're smart, you're competent, and you don't kiss the Alpha's ass. That makes you dangerous to her power base. If Cale started listening to you instead of her, that's insane. I don't want power. I want the pack to survive." "And that's exactly why you scare her, because you actually mean it." Before Rowan could respond, a hush fell over the hall. Cale had stepped onto the central platform, Seraphine at his side, and was raising his hand for silence. "My pack," he began, his voice carrying easily through the space. "Tonight we celebrate not just the bonding of 3 couples, but the strength and unity of Thornridge itself. In a world that grows harsher every year, we stand strong because we stand together." Applause. Rowan felt sick. "Winter tests us, yes," Cale continued. "But we are children of the frontier. We were born in ice and snow. We do not fear the cold, we master it. More applause, louder this time. Rowan saw people nodding, faces bright with pride and alcohol. They believed him. They wanted to believe him. Seraphine leaned close to Cale, whispering something. He smiled, nodded, then turned back to the crowd. "I know some among us worry," he said, and Rowan's stomach dropped. "They see patterns in the weather and predict catastrophe. They want us to hoard supplies, to hide in our stronghold, to live in fear. Oh no. But I say we are not a pack of cowards. We are Thornridge, and we face whatever comes with courage, not paranoia." The crowd erupted in cheers. Rowan stood frozen, Elena's hand tightening on her arm. Cale wasn't looking at her. He didn't need to. Everyone else was. "This is bad," Elena whispered. "Rowan, this is really bad." The ceremony continued, but Rowan barely registered it. She felt eyes on her from every direction, some pitying, some amused, some outright hostile. Seraphine had made her move, publicly framing Rowan as the paranoid alarmist undermining pack morale. She had to fix this, had to make them see. The council meeting, tomorrow. She'd present everything, data, historical records, projections. They couldn't ignore hard evidence. They couldn't. Rowan slipped out of the hall, desperate for air. The wind hit her like a physical blow, colder than it had been an hour ago. She looked up at the sky. Clear, cloudless. The stars brittle and sharp like ice chips, deceptive calm, the kind that came before storms. "Talking to yourself now?" Rowan spun. A young man emerged from the shadows near the door, Finn Corrin, one of the junior scouts. Barely 20, eager, still soft around the edges. He'd been asking her questions about tracking and survival since autumn. "Just checking the weather," she said. Finn looked up. "Seems fine to me." "It's not." He shifted uncomfortably. "Listen, Rowan, I don't know if you should... what the Alpha said in there. Was political theater designed to discredit me before I could warn the pack about a legitimate threat? Yeah, I caught that. But what if you're wrong? What if it's just a bad winter and you're making everyone panic for nothing?" Rowan met his eyes. "And what if I'm right and everyone dies because they were too proud to listen?" Finn had no answer for that. She left him there and walked the perimeter of the stronghold, studying the sky, the wind, the quality of the cold. Everything screamed danger. Every instinct she'd honed over a decade of frontier survival told her time was running out. Tomorrow. She'd make them listen tomorrow. What? The council chamber was a circular room in the stronghold's heart, stone walls lined with territorial maps and pack history. 12 members sat in a semicircle. The Alpha and his mate at the center, flanked by advisors representing security, resources, logistics, trade, and pack welfare. Rowan stood in the middle, her field journal and a portable data pad arranged on the presentation table before her. "Thank you for granting me this time," she began, keeping her voice steady and professional. "I understand the pack has concerns about my weather predictions, so I want to present the complete data set and let you draw your own conclusions." Cale leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. Seraphine sat perfectly still beside him, her expression unreadable. "Proceed," Cale said. Rowan activated the data pad, projecting atmospheric readings onto the wall. "For the past 8 weeks, I've been tracking barometric pressure, temperature gradients, and precipitation patterns. What we're seeing isn't consistent with normal seasonal variation. The pressure is dropping too fast, too uniformly, across too wide an area." She pulled up the next screen. Migration data. Caribou herds have abandoned their traditional routes 3 weeks ahead of schedule. Bird populations are fleeing south in numbers we haven't seen in decades. Even the wolves in outer territories are pulling back. "Animals run from shadows all the time," Seraphine interjected smoothly. "It doesn't mean catastrophe is coming. It does when you cross-reference it with historical records." Rowan pulled up the next file. 112 years ago, the Northern Territories experienced what survivors called the Endless Winter. Temperatures dropped so low that rivers froze solid. Wind speeds exceeded anything previously recorded. Snow accumulation made travel impossible. The death toll across 3 major packs was approximately 70%. Murmurs around the table. Good. She had their attention. The conditions preceding that event match what we're seeing now. Almost exactly. Same pressure patterns, same migration disruptions, same atmospheric markers. Marcus Thane, the head of security, leaned forward. "What are you proposing we do?" Immediate emergency protocols, Rowan said without hesitation. Double our food stores, reinforce all exterior structures, prepare emergency shelters with independent heating sources, and recall all personnel from outer territories. We need to batten down now before the storm hits. And when do you predict this storm will arrive? Kale asked. Based on current progression, within 48 to 72 hours. Silence fell over the chamber. Then Seraphine laughed. It wasn't cruel exactly, just dismissive, like a teacher correcting a particularly silly student. Rowan, she said, her voice honey smooth, we appreciate your diligence, truly, but you're asking us to throw the pack into chaos based on century-old stories and animal behavior. Do you understand what implementing your protocols would cost? The resources, the manpower, the disruption to our trade agreements? I understand that costs don't matter if everyone's dead, Rowan shot back. Mind your tone, Kale warned, his voice hardening. Rowan forced herself to breathe. Alpha, I'm not trying to cause panic. I'm trying to prevent a catastrophe. Every indicator has an alternative explanation, Seraphine interrupted. She rose gracefully, moving to stand beside the projection. Lower pressure? We're in a mountain valley. It fluctuates. Animal migration? Could be food scarcity, disease, any number of factors. And this historical event you keep citing, it happened over a century ago. Our infrastructure is far more advanced, our preparations far more sophisticated. Our arrogance far more dangerous, Rowan countered. That's enough. Kale stood, his alpha presence filling the room. Rowan, you've made your case. The council will deliberate and decide on appropriate measures. There's no time for deliberation. This thing is coming. You're dismissed. The finality in his voice was like a door slamming. Rowan stood there, hands shaking, watching her last chance slip away. Please, she said quietly, please at least prepare emergency shelters, basic supplies, just in case. Seraphine's smile was pitying. We'll take your concerns under advisement. Thank you for your passionate presentation. Rowan gathered her materials with numb fingers and walked out. In the hallway, Elena was waiting. They're not going to do anything, are they? Elena said. No. What are you going to do? Rowan looked at her friend. What I should have done weeks ago. Prepare to survive on my own. The next 36 hours passed in a blur of covert preparation. Rowan had a contingency plan. She'd been building it since autumn when she'd first noticed the warning signs. A hidden bunker, carved into the mountainside 3 miles from the stronghold. She'd been stocking it quietly for weeks. Food, fuel, medical supplies, survival equipment, everything she'd need to weather a catastrophic freeze alone. She made 3 trips, hauling supplies through the snow in the dead of night, always watching for patrols. The bunker was small, barely 12 feet square, but it was fortified, insulated, and equipped with a ventilation system that could keep her alive even in extreme cold. If the super freeze hit and the stronghold fell, she'd retreat here, wait it out, survive. The thought of abandoning the pack made her physically ill. These were her people, her family, but they'd made their choice. Kale had made his choice, and Rowan wasn't going to die for their pride. On the second night, as she was securing the bunker's final supply cache, she heard something that made her blood run cold. A scream, distant but unmistakable, carried on the wind from the direction of the stronghold. Rowan grabbed her emergency radio, switching to the pack's main channel. Static. Then voices, overlapping, panicked, temperature drop, outer walls freezing, supplies contaminated. Emergency. Her heart hammered. It was starting. The super freeze. Not in 48 hours. Now. She sprinted toward the stronghold, the wind already picking up, temperature plummeting with terrifying speed. By the time she reached the outer gates, it had dropped at least 20 degrees. Chaos greeted her. Pack members running in every direction. Enforcers trying to maintain order. Someone screaming about the food stores. The main gates frozen partially open, ice already creeping up the hinges. Rowan found Marcus in the central courtyard, shouting orders. What happened? She demanded. He spun on her, his face ashen. The food stores. Someone sabotaged them. Contaminated the water supply with chemical accelerants. Everything's freezing from the inside out. We've lost at least 40% of our winter reserves. Rowan's mind raced. Sabotage? Who would... Where's the Alpha? Emergency Council, main hall. She ran. The hall was in chaos. Kale stood at the center, Seraphine beside him, surrounded by shouting advisors. When Rowan burst in, everyone turned. I know you're tempted to say, I told you so, Kale said, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. But now's not the time. I wasn't going to, Rowan said. I was going to say we need to implement emergency protocols immediately. This sabotage was timed to hit right as the super freeze begins. Someone wanted us vulnerable. We're investigating, Seraphine said coldly. Security is reviewing access logs. We don't have time for investigations. The temperature's already dropping faster than projected. We need to seal the stronghold, activate emergency heating, and distribute survival supplies to— The supplies are gone, Rowan, Marcus interrupted. Contaminated or destroyed. We have maybe 3 days of food for 300 people. The room went silent. Rowan's mind churned through scenarios, calculations, survival mathematics. 3 days. Super freeze conditions could last weeks, maybe longer. Then we need to send runners to the nearest allied packs, she said. Call for emergency aid. Medical Valley Pack is only 2 days south. The passes will be impassable within hours, Seraphine said. You said so yourself. Then we send them now, before the window closes completely. Kale looked at Marcus. Can we get runners out? Maybe, if we move fast. Do it. Send our fastest scouts. Tell Medical Valley we need emergency food supplies, and we'll compensate triple value. Marcus nodded and left at a run. Rowan turned to Kale. We also need to start rationing immediately, divide remaining supplies into a strict schedule, and set up warming stations throughout the stronghold. People need to stay mobile, keep blood flowing. Hypothermia will kill faster than starvation. For a moment, she thought he might actually listen, might actually acknowledge she'd been right all along. Then Seraphine stepped forward. A moment, Alpha. She leaned close, whispering something Rowan couldn't hear. Kale's expression changed, hardened. Rowan, he said slowly, when did you first notice the contamination in the food stores? She blinked. I didn't. I just got here when the alarm went out. But you predicted this exact scenario. A catastrophic event. Supplies compromised. The pack vulnerable. Ice crawled up Rowan's spine. Because I studied the patterns. I warned you. You were also one of the few people with unrestricted access to the storage facilities, Seraphine said softly. Given your expertise in survival systems, you'd know exactly how to sabotage them in a way that would prove your predictions correct. What? Rowan stared at her in disbelief. You think I did this? I think it's an interesting coincidence, Seraphine replied, her voice perfectly reasonable, perfectly poisonous. You predict disaster, you're ignored, and suddenly disaster strikes in exactly the way you described. That's insane, Rowan turned to Kale. You can't seriously believe, but the look in his eyes told her he absolutely could. Security logged your presence near the storage facilities 3 times in the past week, Seraphine continued, late at night, alone. What were you doing there, Rowan? I was checking temperature controls, making sure the backup heating systems were functional. I was trying to help. Or planting the sabotage, Seraphine suggested, creating the crisis you needed to validate your paranoia. Alpha, please. Rowan stepped toward Kale, but 2 enforcers immediately moved to block her. Listen to me. I would never hurt this pack. Never. Everything I've done has been to protect— Detain her, Kale said quietly. The world tilted. What? Until we complete the investigation, you're to be held under guard. If you're innocent, the evidence will prove it. And if I'm guilty? Rowan demanded, her voice breaking. Seraphine's smile was winter cold. Then you'll face justice for attempted mass murder. The enforcers grabbed Rowan's arms. She didn't fight. What was the point? Around her, the council members looked away, uncomfortable but complicit. Elena was shouting something, trying to push through the crowd, but more enforcers held her back. As they dragged Rowan toward the holding cells, she locked eyes with Seraphine and saw the truth there. The satisfaction. The victory. This had been planned. All of it. The sabotage, the timing, the perfect frame. Seraphine had orchestrated everything to eliminate the one person who might challenge her influence over Kale. And it had worked. The cell was cold, not dangerously so, but enough to be miserable. Rowan sat on the stone bench, her mind churning through everything that had happened. Seraphine was smart. She'd waited until the crisis hit, until everyone was scared and looking for someone to blame. Then she'd served up Rowan on a platter, the paranoid analyst who'd been predicting disaster for weeks, the perfect scapegoat. The door opened. Marcus stepped in, his expression grim. "I need you to be honest with me," he said without preamble. "Did you sabotage the supplies?" "No." "Can you prove it?" "Can you prove I did?" Marcus sat down heavily. "The evidence is circumstantial, but it's there. Your access logs, your predictions. Seraphine's already convinced half the council you're unstable." "And what do you think?" He looked at her for a long moment. "I think you're a pain in the ass who's usually right. But I also think you're the kind of person who'd burn the world to prove a point." "Not this world," Rowan said quietly. "Not this pack." "Then help me prove it. Give me something. Anything I can take to the Alpha." Rowan closed her eyes, thinking. The sabotage had been sophisticated, designed to look like system failure initially. Chemical accelerants introduced into the water lines feeding the food storage units. It would take knowledge of the stronghold's infrastructure, access to restricted chemicals, and timing. "Check the chemical inventory," she said. "Specifically glycol compounds. Whoever did this needed industrial antifreeze, the kind we use in the outer heating systems." "That's restricted access." "Exactly. Cross-reference who had authorization to withdraw those compounds in the past month." Marcus nodded slowly. "I'll look into it." "Marcus." She grabbed his arm before he could leave. "How bad is it out there, the freeze?" His face went grim. "Temperatures dropped 40 degrees in 6 hours. Winds picking up. We're sealing the stronghold completely within the hour. Anyone outside after that is on their own." "What about the runners?" "Made it out before the worst hit. If they move fast, they might reach Medical Valley before the passes close completely." "Might." After Marcus left, Rowan sat in silence, listening to the stronghold settle around her. The wind outside was a constant scream now, rattling the windows, seeking entry. Temperature in the cell was dropping despite the central heating. The system wasn't designed for this level of cold. Hours passed. No one came. Then, around midnight, the door opened again. Elena slipped inside, her face tight with fear. "I shouldn't be here," she whispered. "Security's been doubled, but I convinced the guard I needed to retrieve your personal effects for inventory." "What's happening out there?" "It's bad, Rowan. Really bad. Temperature's still falling. We're burning through fuel faster than projected trying to keep the heating systems running. And the food situation?" She shook her head. "Morale's collapsing. People are scared." "What about the investigation?" "Marcus is working on it, but Seraphine's blocking him at every turn. She's got Kale convinced you're the threat, and now she's positioning herself as the calm leader in crisis. It's brilliant, really. Horrifying, but brilliant." Rowan's hands clenched. "She's going to let the pack die. She'll secure herself and her inner circle in some protected area and leave everyone else to freeze." "Do you have proof of that?" "No, but I know how people like her think. Survival of the fittest, and she considers herself the fittest." Elena pulled something from her coat. Rowan's field journal. "I grabbed this from your quarters before security could confiscate it. Thought you might want it." Rowan took it with shaking hands. "Thank you." "There's something else." Elena's voice dropped even lower. "I overheard Seraphine talking to her personal security team. They're preparing a secondary shelter, somewhere separate from the main stronghold. She's moving supplies there under the guise of emergency distribution." "Where?" "I don't know, but Rowan, I think you need to get out of here." "I'm locked in a cell, Elena." "For now. But if things get worse, if the pack starts dying, they're going to need a scapegoat. And you're already set up perfectly." The implication hung in the air. Public execution. Justice for the saboteur who'd killed the pack. "I'm not running," Rowan said. "These are my people." "These people threw you in a cell." Elena grabbed her shoulders. "Rowan, listen to me. If you die here, you can't help anyone. But if you survive, if I survive, I'm exiled or executed. There's no coming back from treason accusations." "Maybe not. But at least you'd be alive." Before Rowan could respond, voices echoed down the corridor. Elena pressed the journal into Rowan's hands and slipped out, closing the door silently behind her. Rowan sat alone in the darkness, the journal heavy in her lap. Outside, the wind screamed louder. The super freeze had arrived. And she was exactly where Seraphine wanted her, trapped, powerless, and perfectly positioned to take the fall when everything collapsed. But Rowan Vance hadn't survived a decade on the frontier by accepting defeat. If they wanted a scapegoat, they'd chosen the wrong woman. She opened her journal to the back pages, where she'd sketched detailed maps of the stronghold's infrastructure, including routes most people didn't know existed. Maintenance tunnels, emergency access points, the underground passages built into the mountain itself. If she was going to save this pack, she'd have to do it her way. And that meant getting out of this cell. The wind howled, the temperature dropped, and in the frozen darkness, Rowan began to plan her escape. The cold came alive at 3 in the morning. Not metaphorically, Rowan actually felt it happen. One moment the cell was merely uncomfortable, the next it was a living thing trying to suck the warmth from her bones. The temperature had dropped so fast she could see her breath condensing into ice crystals that tinkled when they hit the stone floor. She wrapped her arms around herself, stamping her feet to keep circulation going. The journal Elena had smuggled in lay open on the bench beside her, its pages covered in infrastructure maps and escape routes she'd memorized years ago when she first started working security assessments for the pack. The maintenance tunnel system. That was her way out. Problem was, the nearest access point was in the sub-level storage area, 30 yards from her cell, through 2 locked doors and past at least 3 guard posts. She needed a distraction, something big enough to pull security away from. The lights flickered, then died completely. Emergency lighting kicked in a second later, bathing everything in sickly red. Somewhere in the distance, an alarm began to wail. Rowan pressed her ear against the cell door. Shouts, running footsteps. The distinctive sound of the main heating system shutting down with a mechanical groan that echoed through the entire stronghold. The door lock clicked. Electronic. Now disengaged with the power failure. She didn't hesitate. Pushing the door open, Rowan stepped into the corridor. Empty. The guards had abandoned their posts to respond to whatever emergency was unfolding above. She could hear them on the stairs, voices overlapping in controlled panic. Main generator offline. Backup systems not responding. Temperature in the residential wings dropping fast. Rowan moved in the opposite direction, toward the maintenance access. The sublevel was a maze of storage rooms and mechanical systems that kept the stronghold running. She'd mapped every inch of it during her security surveys, knew which doors stuck, which corridors led to dead ends, which vents connected to what systems. The cold was worse down here. No insulation, no heating ducts, just raw mountain stone and machinery designed to operate in sub-zero temperatures. Her breath came out in white clouds that froze in the air. She found the maintenance tunnel entrance behind a false wall panel in the 3rd storage room. The panel was supposed to be locked, but the mechanism had frozen solid. She wrapped her jacket around her fist and hit it hard, once, twice. The lock shattered on the 3rd strike. The tunnel beyond was pitch black. Rowan pulled out the small emergency light she'd palmed from her cell, a pen light that gave maybe 3 feet of visibility. It would have to be enough. The tunnel sloped downward, carved directly into the mountain. These passages had been built a century ago as emergency evacuation routes, back when the frontier was even more dangerous than it was now. Most pack members didn't even know they existed, but Rowan knew. She'd studied every historical document, every architectural blueprint she could get her hands on. The tunnel split after 20 yards. Left led deeper into the mountain, toward the old mining shafts that had been sealed decades ago. Right led toward the eastern ridge, where the bunker she'd prepared waited 3 miles distant. She went right. The temperature dropped with every step. Ice coated the walls in thick crystalline layers that reflected her penlight in strange, shifting patterns. The floor was treacherous, smooth stone covered in frost that made every footfall a gamble. Behind her, distant and muffled by stone, she heard explosions of sound. More alarms. Voices raised in panic. The stronghold was dying. Seraphine's sabotage had been even more thorough than Rowan had realized. It wasn't just the food supplies. It was the entire infrastructure. The heating systems, the power grid, everything timed to fail simultaneously in the teeth of the super freeze. But why? What did Seraphine gain from destroying the pack? Unless she didn't plan to destroy it, just Cull it. The realization hit Rowan like a physical blow. Seraphine wasn't trying to kill everyone. She was creating conditions where only the strongest, most ruthless would survive. Natural selection accelerated to nightmare speed. And when it was over, when the weak had been eliminated and only the survivors remained, Seraphine would be there, having weathered the storm in safety, ready to lead a leaner, harder pack that would follow her without question. It was brilliant. Horrifying, but brilliant. The tunnel opened onto a narrow ledge carved into the mountainside. Wind hit Rowan like a sledgehammer, nearly knocking her off her feet. She grabbed the rock face, pressing herself flat against it. The world beyond was white chaos. Snow fell so thick she couldn't see more than 5 feet. The wind shrieked, tearing at her clothes, trying to pry her loose and throw her into the void below. The temperature had to be somewhere around -40, maybe lower. This was the super freeze, not the beginning, the full apocalyptic reality of it. And she was standing outside, 3 miles from her bunker, with nothing but the clothes on her back. Rowan pulled herself back into the tunnel opening, mind racing. 3 miles. In normal conditions, an hour's hike. In this? It might as well be 300. She'd freeze to death before she made it halfway. But staying here meant going back to the stronghold, back to the cell, back to being Seraphine's convenient scapegoat when people started dying. Forward or back? Death or imprisonment, neither was acceptable. She thought of her bunker, the supplies, the heat, the safety waiting if she could just reach it. She'd prepared for exactly this scenario. Survival gear cached at intervals along the route, emergency shelters, everything she needed, except she'd expected to make the journey before the freeze hit, not during it. "Okay," she said aloud, her voice immediately snatched away by the wind. "Okay, think." The maintenance tunnel system didn't just have one exit. There were others scattered across the mountain at various elevations. She'd mapped them all. One of them, the northern outlet, maybe 200 yards from here, opened near an old ranger station that had been abandoned for years. If the station was still intact, it would have basic supplies, enough to get her to the bunker, if it was still intact. Rowan made her decision. She pulled her jacket tighter, wrapped her scarf around her face until only her eyes showed, and stepped back into the tunnel. The route to the northern outlet took her deeper into the mountain, through passages so narrow she had to turn sideways in places. The cold here was different, not the killing wind of outside, but a deep, bone-penetrating chill that radiated from the stone itself. She focused on keeping moving. Stop for too long, and hypothermia would set in. Already her fingers were going numb despite the gloves. The passage opened into a natural cavern, and Rowan's light caught something that made her stop dead. Supplies. Crates stacked against the cavern wall, covered in frost, but clearly recent. She approached, wiping ice from the nearest label. Medical Valley Pack. Emergency relief. The runners. They'd made it to Medical Valley and the relief supplies had been sent back, but they'd never made it to the stronghold. Someone had intercepted them here, in the tunnel system, and hidden them. Rowan pried open the nearest crate. Food, medical supplies, fuel canisters. Everything the pack desperately needed, stashed in a location where it would do no good whatsoever. Looking for something? Rowan spun, her penlight catching a figure emerging from the far side of the cavern. Finn, the young scout. But the eager, soft-edged kid was gone. In his place stood someone harder, colder, with a rifle pointed directly at her chest. "Finn," Rowan said carefully, "what are you doing here?" "My job." He stepped closer, keeping the rifle steady. "Making sure no one interferes with the plan." Seraphine's plan. The pack's survival plan. His voice was defensive, almost pleading. "You don't understand, Rowan. The pack was dying anyway. Too big, too soft, too dependent on easy trade and comfortable living. This is natural selection. This is making us strong again. By letting innocent people freeze to death. By letting the weak die so the strong can rebuild," Finn's voice cracked. Seraphine explained it all. The super freeze is an opportunity. A reset. When it's over, we'll be lean and hard and ready for anything the frontier throws at us. Rowan's mind raced. Finn had been recruited. One of Seraphine's inner circle, positioned to intercept the relief supplies and ensure the pack's suffering continued. "And you're okay with that?" she asked. You're okay with watching your friends die? Friends who would have held us back. But there was doubt in his voice now, uncertainty. What about Elena? Marcus? The children in the nursery wing, are they weak too? Stop it. What about your mother, Finn? She's in the medical ward with respiratory issues. Is she weak? Does she deserve to freeze because Seraphine decided she's not fit enough to survive? Shut up, the rifle wavered. Rowan took a careful step forward. You're a good person, Finn. I know you are. And good people don't let mass murder happen when they have the power to stop it. It's not murder. It's survival. It's genocide dressed up in pretty words. For a long moment, they stood there. Finn with his rifle, Rowan with nothing but words, and the desperate hope that some part of the kid she'd mentored still existed. Then Finn lowered the rifle. I didn't want this, he said quietly. I didn't want any of this, but Seraphine said, she said it was the only way, that you'd understand if you weren't so blind. Help me save them, Rowan said. Help me get these supplies to the stronghold. We can't. Finn's voice was hollow. Even if we wanted to, Seraphine's locked down the main entrances. The only way back is through the tunnels, and she's got guards at every access point, guards loyal to her. Then we find another way. There is no other way. Finn slumped against the cavern wall. It's over, Rowan. The pack's finished. The only question is who survives. Rowan looked at the crates of supplies, then back at Finn. An idea was forming, dangerous, probably insane, but the only option she had. Where's Seraphine's secondary shelter? She asked. The one Elena heard about. Finn hesitated. Finn. Where? The old geothermal station, 5 miles west. She converted it into a fortified bunker months ago. Enough supplies for 50 people to last 6 months. And that's where she is now? Her and her inner circle, about 30 people total. They evacuated when the power failed. Rowan's jaw clenched. While the pack froze in the stronghold, Seraphine was sitting in comfort, waiting for the culling to complete itself. How many guards? At the bunker, maybe 8, all ex-military. They won't hesitate to kill anyone who approaches. What about here, in the tunnels? Finn looked at her warily. 3 at the main junction, 2 at the southern outlet. Why? Because we're going to do something incredibly stupid. Before Finn could respond, distant sounds echoed through the tunnel system. Voices. Multiple voices, moving fast. They know you're gone, Finn said. They're searching the tunnels. Rowan grabbed one of the smaller supply crates. Help me move these deeper into the cavern. We need to hide them. Why? What are you... Just do it. They worked fast, hauling crates into a natural alcove and covering them with loose rock. The voices were getting closer. At least 5 people, maybe more. When they get here, tell them you were securing the supplies, Rowan whispered. Tell them I was never here. They'll kill you if they catch you. Then I won't get caught. She slipped into a side passage just as lights appeared at the cavern entrance. Pressed flat against the stone, barely breathing, Rowan watched as 5 armed guards entered, with Marcus at the lead. Her heart lurched. Marcus. Not one of Seraphine's people, but genuinely searching for her. Finn, Marcus called out. You see anyone come through here? No, sir. Been here 2 hours. Haven't seen anyone. Marcus swept his light across the cavern, his expression grim. Rowan Vance escaped her cell during the power failure. Alpha wants her found before she reaches the outer perimeter. What happens if she makes it outside? She won't survive. Temperatures hit -50. Winds strong enough to strip flesh from bone. Anyone caught out there is dead within minutes. Rowan pressed deeper into the shadows. -50, even worse than she'd projected. Spread out, Marcus ordered. Check every passage, every alcove. She's resourceful. Don't underestimate her. The guards fanned out. One headed directly for Rowan's hiding spot. She made a split-second decision. Before he could spot her, she stepped out, hands raised. Marcus? Every weapon swung toward her. Marcus's eyes went wide. Stand down! He barked at his team. Then to Rowan, Are you out of your mind? We've been tearing the stronghold apart looking for you. I need to talk to Kale, alone. That's not going to happen. You're under arrest for sabotage and attempted murder. I didn't sabotage anything, and you know it. What I know is that the pack is dying. Marcus's voice was raw with exhaustion and grief. We've lost the main heating grid. Food supplies are 90% depleted. We've got 300 people and maybe 72 hours before hypothermia starts killing the vulnerable. Where's Seraphine? Something flickered across Marcus's face. Coordinating rescue efforts. From her private bunker 5 miles west? Silence fell across the cavern. The guards exchanged glances. Even in the dim light, Rowan could see the realization dawning. How did you know about that? Marcus asked quietly. Because it's where she's been planning to ride out the freeze while everyone else dies. Tell me I'm wrong, Marcus. Tell me you've actually seen her in the stronghold in the last 6 hours. He couldn't. The look on his face said everything. She played us, Rowan continued. All of us. The sabotage, the frame job, the timing, it was all designed to cull the pack down to her chosen survivors. And we let her do it because we were too proud to listen to the one person warning us it was coming. That's a serious accusation. Then investigate it. But do it fast because in 72 hours there won't be anyone left to save. Marcus stared at her for a long moment. Behind him, his guards were muttering among themselves, doubt spreading like infection. Let's say you're right, he said finally. What do you propose we do? Get these supplies to the stronghold, all of them. Then we go to Seraphine's bunker and take back everything she stole. That's suicide. She's got ex-military guards and fortified defenses. And you've got me. Someone who's been preparing for this exact scenario for 3 months. Someone who knows more about surviving the frontier than Seraphine's hired thugs ever will. You're one person, Rowan. No. She looked at Finn, who'd been listening in shocked silence. I'm 2. And if you're half the leader I think you are, Marcus, I'm about to be a lot more. The gamble hung in the air. Marcus could arrest her right now, drag her back to the stronghold, let Seraphine's plan play out. Or he could choose to believe her. One of the guards stepped forward, a woman Rowan recognized as Sarah Kane, a veteran enforcer with 2 decades of frontier service. I believe her, Sarah said quietly. I've been watching the supply logs. Seraphine's been diverting resources for months. I thought it was just inefficiency, but if you look at the pattern, she shook her head. This was planned. Another guard nodded. My sister's in the residential wing. Temperature's already down to freezing. Kids are crying, old people are dying. If there's even a chance Rowan's right. Marcus closed his eyes. When he opened them, something had changed. All right, he said, we do this your way. But if you're wrong, if I'm wrong, I'm dead anyway. We all are. They moved fast after that. The guards hauled crates of supplies while Rowan and Marcus worked out a plan. The tunnel system connected to the stronghold sublevels in 3 places. Seraphine's guards controlled the main junction, but there were smaller access points that might be unguarded. We go in quiet, Rowan said. Small team, minimal confrontation, get the supplies to the residential wings, then secure the heating systems. And Seraphine? She's not in the stronghold. She's safe in her bunker. For now, we focus on saving lives. We can deal with her later. Marcus nodded. Sarah, take 4 guards and start moving supplies through the eastern access. Finn, you're with Rowan and me. We're going to check the heating systems. They split up. Rowan led Marcus and Finn through a narrow passage that opened into the stronghold's mechanical room, a vast chamber filled with pipes, generators, and the massive heating system that kept the whole place habitable, or should have. The main generator sat dark and cold, its control panel smashed beyond repair. Sabotage, professional and thorough. Can you fix it? Marcus asked. Rowan examined the damage. Not with what we have here. We'd need replacement parts, and even then, she shook her head. Seraphine knew exactly what to destroy. So the heating's gone. What about alternatives? Rowan thought fast. Fireplaces. Every major room has them. They were the original heating source before the generator system was installed. If we can get enough fuel, we can keep people warm the old-fashioned way. That's going to take... A sound cut him off. Voices, echoing through the passages. Not Marcus's guards. Others. Someone's coming, Finn whispered. They ducked behind the generator just as 6 figures entered the mechanical room. Rowan recognized 2 of them, pack members she'd worked with, trusted. Now they wore armbands marked with Seraphine's personal symbol. The tallest one, a man named Derek Cross, swept a light across the damaged generator. Looks good, he said. Nobody's getting this running again without our help. What about the food stores? Asked another. Completely destroyed. Medical Valley's relief supplies are hidden in the tunnels. By the time anyone finds them, if they find them, most of the pack will be dead from cold or starvation. And us? We rendezvous with Seraphine at the geothermal station once the count hits under 50 survivors. She wants fighters and loyalists. Anyone who makes it through the culling proved they're strong enough. Marcus's hand moved to his weapon, but Rowan grabbed his wrist, shaking her head. 6 against 3, and the noise would bring more. They waited, barely breathing, as Seraphine's guards completed their check and left. I'm going to kill her, Marcus said, his voice shaking with rage. I'm going to hunt her down and— You're going to save your pack first, Rowan interrupted. Revenge comes after survival. They made their way back to the residential wings through maintenance passages. The scene that greeted them was worse than Rowan had imagined. 300 people huddled in the main hall, which had become a makeshift shelter. Families clustered around dying fires in the massive fireplaces. Children cried. The elderly shivered under every blanket the pack could find. The temperature inside had to be barely above freezing, and in the center of it all, trying desperately to maintain order, was Kyle. The Alpha King looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past 12 hours. His face was haggard, his eyes haunted. He was helping an elderly woman closer to one of the fires when he spotted Rowan. For a moment, their eyes met across the hall. Then Marcus stepped forward, his voice carrying across the crowd. Alpha, we found the relief supplies, and we found proof of who really sabotaged the stronghold. Every face turned toward them. The hall went silent except for the crackle of fire and the howl of wind outside. Kale straightened slowly. Explain. Marcus did, laying out everything they'd discovered, from the hidden supplies to Seraphine's private bunker to the guards admitting to the sabotage. With each revelation, Kale's expression grew harder, colder. Where is Seraphine? He asked, his voice deadly quiet. The geothermal station, Marcus said, 5 miles west. She evacuated with her inner circle when the crisis began. Kale's hands clenched into fists. Around the hall, pack members were rising, voices raised in anger and disbelief. She left us to die? While she sat safe? My children are freezing and she's been planning this? Kale raised his hand for silence. The Alpha presence in that gesture was absolute. Everyone quieted immediately. He looked at Rowan. You were right. About all of it. The super freeze, the sabotage, everything. And He stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. I failed you. I failed the pack. You can apologize later, Rowan said. Right now we need to keep people alive. Marcus's team is bringing the relief supplies. We need to organize distribution, get the fireplaces burning at full capacity, and set up rotating warming stations. What about the heating system? Destroyed beyond immediate repair, we're going old school: fire, insulation, and body heat. It's going to be hard, and we're going to lose people, but if we're smart and we move fast, we can save most of the pack. Kale nodded. Tell me what you need. For the next 6 hours, Rowan orchestrated survival on a knife's edge. The relief supplies were distributed with military precision, food rationed to maximize energy while minimizing waste, medical supplies allocated to the most vulnerable, fuel divided among the fireplaces. They organized the pack into groups based on cold tolerance, putting the young and healthy on rotating patrols to keep blood flowing while the vulnerable stayed near the fires. Rowan showed them tricks she'd learned from a decade of frontier survival: how to layer clothing for maximum insulation, how to recognize early hypothermia symptoms, how to create warming pockets using body heat and reflected fire, how to survive when survival seemed impossible. And slowly, against all odds, the pack stabilized. Not comfortable, not safe, but alive. Kale worked alongside his people, his earlier arrogance burned away by necessity. Rowan watched him carrying firewood for the elderly, sharing his rations with children, staying up through the night to keep watch. Maybe there was hope for him after all. Around hour 5, Rowan found herself at one of the warming stations, accepting a cup of hot broth from Elena. You did it, Elena said quietly. You actually saved them. Not yet. This is just buying time. The superfreeze is going to last days, maybe weeks. These supplies will run out. So what do we do? Rowan looked toward the main doors where wind still howled against the barricades. We go get more. From someone who doesn't need them anymore. Elena followed her gaze. The geothermal station, Seraphine's bunker. She's got supplies for 50 people to last 6 months. We've got 300 people who will be dead in 72 hours without them. That's suicide. You said yourself the cold outside is lethal. It is, for most people. Rowan met her friend's eyes. But I've been preparing for this exact scenario. I've got a bunker 3 miles from here with cold weather gear, supplies, everything I need. If I can reach it, I can make it to Seraphine's station and back. If you can reach it, that's a big if. It's the only if that matters. They were interrupted by Marcus approaching, his expression grim. We've got a problem, he said. Scouts report the outer perimeter is completely frozen over. Temperatures down to -65. The wind's strong enough that we can't even open the main doors without risking structural damage. How long until it breaks? Rowan asked. Weather this extreme? Could be days, could be weeks. No way to know. Rowan felt the weight of that settling over her. Trapped. They were trapped in a damaged stronghold with limited supplies and 300 mouths to feed, unless someone could get out. She made her decision. I'm going after Seraphine's supplies, she said. Tonight. That's insane, Marcus protested. You'll die before you make it 100 yards. I'll die here if I don't try. We all will. Then I'm going with you. No. Rowan shook her head. The pack needs you here. They need leadership, organization, someone they trust. That's you, not me. I'm not letting you go alone. You don't have a choice. They stared at each other for a long moment. Then Marcus sighed. You're the most stubborn person I've ever met, he said. I know. It's kept me alive this long. She spent the next hour preparing. The pack had limited cold weather gear, but she assembled the best of it. Insulated layers, a heavy coat rated for extreme temperatures, a face mask that would protect against frostbite, goggles against the snow blindness. It wouldn't be enough. Not in -65-degree temperatures, but it would buy her time. Cale found her as she was checking her route on a hand-drawn map. Marcus told me your plan, he said. I'm ordering you not to go. Since when do I follow your orders? Rowan didn't look up. Rowan, please. Something in his voice made her pause. I can't lose anyone else. This pack, these people, I already failed them once. If you die out there because of my arrogance, then you learn to live with it. Like you're learning to live with everything else you've done. She finally met his eyes. I'm not going out there for you, Cale. I'm going because it's the right thing to do. Because those supplies can save lives. Because someone has to. Let me send a team. Trained soldiers who won't make it. This isn't about training. It's about knowing the land, understanding the cold, being willing to do whatever it takes. That's me. Only me. Cale's jaw worked. If you make it back, I want you to know. I'm sorry. For all of it. For not listening. For letting Seraphine manipulate me. For save it for when I return. Will you? Rowan pulled on her final layer of protection. Guess we'll find out. The pack gathered as she approached the small side door they'd unsealed, the only exit that wouldn't risk structural damage from the wind. Faces watched her with expressions ranging from hope to despair to something that might have been awe. Marcus handed her a radio. Check in every hour. If you miss a check-in, I'm sending a team after you. Don't. If I don't make it, a team won't either. Save your people. Elena hugged her tight. You're the bravest idiot I've ever known. I'll put that on my gravestone. Rowan approached the door. Beyond it, through the small window, she could see nothing but white chaos. Last chance to reconsider, Marcus said. I never reconsider. She pulled the door open. The wind hit like a freight train, nearly ripping her off her feet. Snow and ice pelted her face, even through the protective gear. The cold was beyond anything she'd ever experienced. Not just freezing, but actively hostile, seeking entry through every gap in her protection. She stepped through the door. It slammed shut behind her. And Rowan Vance was alone in the killing cold, 3 miles from salvation and 5 from revenge, with nothing but will and skill between her and death. She took her first step into the white chaos. Then another, and another. Behind her, the stronghold disappeared into the storm. Ahead, somewhere in that frozen hell, her bunker waited. If she could reach it. If she could survive. If she could prove that sometimes the one they cast aside becomes the one they can't live without. The wind screamed. The cold bit deeper. And Rowan pushed forward into the heart of the superfreeze, where only the strongest, smartest, and most stubborn had any hope of survival. She planned to be all three. The first 50 yards nearly killed her. Not from the cold itself, though that was trying hard enough, but from the sheer physical impossibility of moving through wind strong enough to bend trees and snow so thick it formed a living wall. Rowan fought for every step, her body bent almost horizontal against the gale, her eyes streaming tears that froze on her cheeks before they could fall. The world had become a featureless void of white noise and white chaos. No landmarks. No horizon. Just endless howling emptiness trying to erase her from existence. She counted steps to keep from going mad. 1, 2, 3. Each one a small victory against the storm, each one potentially her last. Somewhere around step 200, she found the first cache. She'd buried it 3 months ago, a waterproof container holding chemical heating packs, emergency rations, and a compass designed to work in extreme cold. The marker was a cairn of rock she'd built, now barely visible under accumulated ice. Rowan dug with numb fingers, finally pulling the container free. The heating packs went immediately against her core, under her layers. The warmth was almost painful as it spread through her torso. She checked the compass. Northeast. Her bunker was northeast, approximately 2.5 miles from this position. 2.5 miles. In negative 65-degree temperatures. In wind that could kill. She could turn back. Probably should turn back. She'd proven it was impossible, done her due diligence. No one could fault her for... Behind her, muffled by the storm but unmistakable, came a sound that made her blood freeze colder than the weather ever could. A distress signal. The emergency frequency she'd given Marcus, crackling through her radio in short, desperate bursts. Rowan pulled the radio from her inner pocket, pressing it against her ear to hear over the wind. Temperature critical, children in distress, need medical. The voice cut out, then returned. Hour before we start losing, please, anyone... It was Elena. And she was crying. Rowan's hand tightened on the radio. The bunker was northeast. Safety was northeast. Everything she needed to survive was northeast. But the stronghold was behind her. The dying pack was behind her. She stood there in the screaming wind, caught between survival and duty, between the smart choice and the right one. Then she thought of the children huddled around dying fires, of the elderly shivering under insufficient blankets, of 300 people who'd scorned her, imprisoned her, chosen to believe a liar over the truth, and realized with absolute clarity that she was about to do something spectacularly, suicidally stupid. Rowan turned southwest, toward Seraphine's bunker, toward the geothermal station 5 miles distant, where stolen supplies sat hoarded while children froze. If she was going to die in this frozen hell, she'd die taking something back. The journey became a blur of endless white and screaming wind. Rowan lost track of time, of distance, of everything except the compass bearing and the need to keep moving. Stop and die. Simple as that. She found her second cache after what might have been an hour or might have been 3. More heating packs, an emergency shelter, a reflective tarp designed to trap body heat. She huddled inside for precious minutes, letting warmth return to her extremities before pushing on. The landscape shifted gradually from open snowfield to rocky terrain. Good. The geothermal station had been built into a canyon where the rocks provided natural shelter. If she was seeing rocks, she was getting close. Around what her frozen brain estimated as hour 4, she saw a light. Faint, distant, barely visible through the storm, but definitely artificial. The bunker. Rowan pushed toward it, adrenaline cutting through exhaustion. The light grew stronger as she approached, revealing the entrance to the geothermal station. A reinforced steel door set into the canyon wall, illuminated by a single exterior lamp. And standing guard outside, looking miserable but alert, were 2 figures in cold weather gear. Seraphine's guards. Rowan dropped behind a boulder, her mind racing. 2 guards outside meant more inside. She was one person, half frozen, armed with nothing but a knife and righteous fury. Not exactly tactical superiority. She keyed her radio, keeping her voice low. Marcus, you there? Static. Then, Rowan? Thank God. We thought, where are you? The geothermal station. I've got eyes on Seraphine's bunker. 2 guards outside, unknown number inside. Are you insane? You can't assault that position alone. Watch me. Rowan, I need information. The station's built over geothermal vents, right? There should be maintenance access tunnels for the heating system. Silence as Marcus consulted records. Then, yes, original blueprints show access from below through the old mining shaft network. But those tunnels were sealed 20 years ago. Sealed, not destroyed. If I can find the access point, you'll be trapped underground with no backup and no idea what you're walking into. So, Tuesday. Got it. This isn't funny. I'm not laughing, Marcus. I'm freezing to death looking at supplies that could save the pack while children die. So unless you've got a better plan, I'm going in. More silence. Then quietly. The access point should be half a mile south of the main entrance. Old ventilation shaft. If it's not completely frozen over, you might be able to climb down. Thank you. Rowan, please be careful. Careful's never been my strong suit. She clicked off and started moving, skirting wide around the bunker to avoid the guards. The ventilation shaft was exactly where Marcus said, though barely visible under accumulated snow and ice. Rowan cleared the entrance with numb hands, revealing a metal grate covering a shaft that dropped straight down into darkness. Perfect. She pried the grate loose and peered down. The shaft disappeared into black, but she could see rungs built into the wall, an access ladder for maintenance workers. No way to know if the rungs were stable. No way to know if the shaft was clear all the way down. No way to know anything except that this was probably going to kill her. Rowan lowered herself onto the ladder and started climbing down into the dark. The descent was a nightmare. Ice coated the rungs, making every grip treacherous. Her gloves were too thick for precision, too thin for warmth. Twice she slipped, barely catching herself before falling into the void below. After maybe 60 feet, the shaft opened into a horizontal tunnel. Rowan dropped onto the tunnel floor, her legs nearly buckling. She pulled out her penlight, sweeping it across the space. Old mining tunnel, reinforced with timber and stone. The air was warmer here, not comfortable, but above freezing thanks to the geothermal heat bleeding through the rock. Pipes ran along the ceiling, carrying hot water to the bunker's heating system, and voices echoed from somewhere ahead. Multiple voices, laughing and talking. Rowan moved forward carefully, following the sound. The tunnel sloped upward, widening as it went. She passed storerooms carved into the rock, some empty, some filled with supplies that made her jaw clench. Food, medical equipment, fuel, blankets, everything the stronghold needed, hoarded here while people died. The voices grew louder. Rowan pressed against the tunnel wall, edging toward a light source ahead. The tunnel opened into a large chamber, the main bunker space, and what she saw there made rage burn hot enough to forget the cold. 30 people lounging in comfort. A massive fireplace blazing. Tables laden with food. Seraphine herself holding court in the center, dressed like she was at a social gathering instead of presiding over mass murder. Should be complete within 48 hours, she was saying to her assembled followers. The weak will have been culled, the disloyal eliminated. What remains will be a pack worthy of the frontier. And the Alpha? Someone asked. Seraphine's smile was cold. Kale will survive. He's strong enough, but he'll be broken, traumatized, ready to accept guidance, my guidance. By the time we return to claim the stronghold, he'll be mine completely. What about Marcus, the security team? Marcus is loyal to the pack, not to me. He'll be a problem. We'll deal with him when the time comes. Rowan's hands clenched. She'd heard enough. She pulled back into the tunnel, mind racing. 30 people. At least 8 armed guards. Between her and enough supplies to save 300 lives. Impossible odds. No backup, no plan. Just the cold rage of someone who'd been right all along, watching the guilty feast while the innocent froze. She keyed her radio one more time. Marcus. Still alive? For now. I'm in the bunker. I've got visual on Seraphine and her people. How many? 30, plus guards. I need you to do something for me. Name it. In exactly 10 minutes, I need you to trigger every alarm in the stronghold. Make it loud. Make it sound like a full-scale emergency. Why? Because these people are monitoring stronghold communications. When they hear the alarms, they'll panic, think something's going catastrophically wrong. In that confusion, I'm going to blow their comfortable little world apart. Rowan, you can't. 10 minutes, Marcus. Don't let me down. She clicked off before he could argue. The next 10 minutes were the longest of her life. Rowan spent them mapping the bunker layout, identifying structural weak points, and doing something that would either be brilliant or suicidal. She found the main heating system, the pipes carrying geothermal water throughout the bunker. They converged in a central chamber, controlled by a series of valves and pressure regulators, and she had 10 chemical heating packs in her gear. Rowan worked fast, placing the packs against the pressure regulators and setting them to activate simultaneously. The regulators were designed to handle normal thermal expansion, but not rapid, extreme heat applied directly to the control mechanisms. When they failed, and they would fail, the pressure would spike throughout the system, violently. She finished with 30 seconds to spare and moved to a defensive position with a clear view of the main bunker chamber. Then the alarms started. Even from 5 miles away, even muffled by rock and distance, the stronghold's emergency klaxons were unmistakable. They echoed through Seraphine's radio, filling the bunker chamber with wailing urgency. The reaction was immediate. Seraphine's people jumped to their feet. Someone turned up the volume on the radio, and panicked voices filled the air. Structural collapse in the east wing. Fire spreading through residential. Need immediate evacuation. It was all fake, Marcus playing theater, but Seraphine didn't know that. Get me a status report, she snapped. Now! Her communications officer worked frantically. Radios cutting in and out. Interference from the storm. I'm trying to... That's when Rowan's chemical packs failed the pressure regulators. The explosion wasn't massive, more of a concentrated burst as superheated steam erupted from overpressurized pipes. But in the enclosed space, it was chaos. Pipes burst throughout the bunker. Steam filled the air. The lights flickered and died, plunging everything into darkness broken only by firelight. And in that darkness, Rowan moved. She hit the main chamber like a ghost, using the confusion to her advantage. Most of Seraphine's people weren't fighters. They were administrators, sycophants, chosen for loyalty rather than combat ability. The guards were a different story. Rowan took down the first one with a rock to the temple. Brutal, efficient, silent. She grabbed his weapon and used it to disable the second guard before anyone realized there was a threat inside the bunker. By the time the emergency lights kicked in, Rowan was standing in the center of the chamber with a rifle pointed at Seraphine's chest. Surprise, she said. The bunker went dead silent. Seraphine stared at her, shock giving way to something that might have been respect or fear. Hard to tell in the dim light. Rowan Vance, she said slowly. You walked 5 miles through a super freeze to get here. I'm almost impressed. Save it. I'm here for the supplies, all of them. Are you? Seraphine tilted her head. Or are you here for revenge? Because you could have run, could have saved yourself, but you came here instead. That speaks to something other than practical necessity. I came here because children are dying while you play Queen of the Mountain. Children who were weak enough to die were going to die anyway. Rowan's finger tightened on the trigger. One more word about weakness, and I'll show you how weak a bullet makes you. Movement to her left. One of the guards trying to flank her. Rowan fired a warning shot that ricocheted off the stone wall, and everyone froze. Next person who moves gets it in the chest, she said calmly. Now, here's what's going to happen. You're going to start loading supplies, food, medical equipment, fuel, everything. We're taking it back to the stronghold. In this weather? Seraphine laughed. You'll never make it. Then I'll die trying, which is more than you can say. I'll make you a counteroffer. Seraphine stepped forward, ignoring the rifle. Brave or stupid, also hard to tell. Stay here. Join us. You're clearly strong enough, smart enough. When this is over, we rebuild the pack our way. No more weak links, no more dead weight, just the strong, led by the worthy. Define worthy. You're looking at her. Rowan almost laughed. You're a coward who sabotaged her own pack and hid while they died. That's not worthy. That's pathetic. Seraphine's expression hardened. I did what was necessary. I saw a pack growing soft, dependent, vulnerable. I created conditions for natural selection, for evolution. You created conditions for genocide. Semantics. No. Murder. They stared at each other across the chamber. Around them, Seraphine's followers watched with expressions ranging from shock to calculation. Some were clearly having second thoughts. Then one of them spoke, a young woman Rowan recognized from the Stronghold's trade department. "How many died?" she asked quietly. "How many are dead because of the sabotage?" Seraphine turned on her. "The weak were always going to— How many?" The question hung in the air. "We don't know," Rowan said. "We won't know until this is over. But children are freezing, old people are dying, and all of you sat here in comfort, eating their food, burning their fuel, while they suffered." The young woman's face crumpled. I thought we were just preparing for the worst. I didn't know she'd actually—" Others were nodding. The doubt Rowan had planted was spreading like infection. "She lied to you," Rowan continued, pressing the advantage. "She told you this was about strength, about evolution, but it was about power, her power, and she used you to get it. Don't listen to her," Seraphine snapped. "She's manipulating you, trying to—" A voice cut through the argument, deep, rough, coming from the tunnel entrance behind Rowan. "She's telling the truth." Everyone turned. A man emerged from the shadows, tall, scarred, moving with the predatory grace of a born fighter. His clothes were frontier gear, weathered and practical. His eyes were winter-hard, and Rowan had never seen him before in her life. "Who the hell are you?" Seraphine demanded. The man's smile was knife-sharp. "Someone who's been tracking you for 3 months, ever since you contacted the Blackridge Syndicate about purchasing enough chemical accelerants to contaminate a pack's food supply." Rowan's mind raced. Blackridge Syndicate, a criminal organization operating across the frontier territories. Smugglers, weapons dealers, worse. "I don't know what you're talking about," Seraphine said, but her voice had lost its certainty. "Yeah, you do. You paid them $60,000 in trade goods. They kept records. I stole the records." He pulled out a datapad, tossing it to land at Seraphine's feet. "It's all there. Communications, payment schedules, delivery confirmation, everything." Seraphine stared at the pad like it was a snake. "I'm Kyle Draven," the man continued, "former Alpha of the Silver Rock Pack. Or I was, until my second-in-command and her followers poisoned the pack's water supply, blamed me for it, and drove me into exile." His eyes locked on Seraphine. "Sound familiar?" The bunker went silent. "I've been tracking syndicate operations for months," Kyle said, "following the trail of sabotage and betrayal. When I heard about your order, I started watching Thornridge. Figured I'd find another ambitious sociopath destroying a pack for personal gain." He looked at Rowan. "What I didn't expect to find was someone actually trying to stop it." "How long have you been here, Ibba?" Rowan asked. "Followed you through the storm, watched you climb down the ventilation shaft. Figured if you were crazy enough to assault this place alone, you might be someone worth backing up. You could have helped earlier. You seemed to be handling it." His smile widened slightly. "Besides, I wanted to see if you'd actually pull the trigger on her." "Still might." "Fair." Seraphine's guards were looking at each other now, uncertainty spreading. The datapad lay on the floor like a lit bomb, its implications destroying the narrative she'd built. "Even if that's real," Seraphine said slowly, "it doesn't change the fundamental truth. The pack was weak. It needed a leader who gave a damn about them," Rowan interrupted. "Not a wannabe dictator playing God with people's lives." Movement exploded from 3 directions at once. One of the guards lunged for Rowan. Another went for Kale. A third grabbed for the datapad. Rowan dropped the first guard with a rifle butt to the jaw. Kale moved like liquid violence, disabling his attacker in 2 brutal strikes. The third guard got his hands on the datapad, and Seraphine shot him. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. The guard crumpled, blood spreading across the stone floor. "Nobody touches that evidence," Seraphine said calmly, the smoking pistol steady in her hand. She turned to her remaining followers. "We're leaving, now. Anyone who wants to stay and face whatever justice Rowan thinks she can deliver is welcome to. The rest of you, gather your gear and move." "Where are you going to go?" Rowan demanded. "The freeze is going to last weeks. You can't survive out there." "I'll take my chances over whatever you've got planned." Half of Seraphina's people moved toward their leader. The other half stayed frozen, torn between fear and guilt. Kyle stepped forward. "You're not going anywhere. You killed your own guard. You admitted to sabotage. This ends here. This ends when I say it does. Seraphine swung her pistol toward Kyle, and the bunker shook. Not from violence, from the earth itself moving. The geothermal system, already damaged by Rowan's sabotage, finally gave way completely. Pipes burst throughout the facility, releasing superheated steam and water under pressure. The floor buckled as underground chambers flooded. "Everyone out!" Rowan shouted. "Move!" Chaos erupted. People scrambled for the exits as the bunker began tearing itself apart. Steam filled the air, making it impossible to see more than a few feet. Rowan grabbed what supplies she could carry and ran for the main entrance. Behind her, she heard Kyle shouting orders, trying to organize an evacuation. She burst through the steel door into the storm outside. The guards who'd been posted there were gone, either fled or dead, impossible to tell. Others followed, some of Seraphine's people, some carrying supplies, all running from the collapsing bunker. The entrance exploded outward as the pressure release failed catastrophically. Rock and metal debris scattered across the snow. Rowan counted heads. 15 people made it out. Maybe more still inside, maybe trapped, maybe dead. No sign of Seraphine. Kyle appeared at her shoulder, bleeding from a cut on his forehead. "We need to move. The whole installation's coming down." "What about—" A secondary explosion answered her question. The entire bunker entrance collapsed inward, sealing whatever remained inside under tons of rock. Rowan stared at the rubble. Seraphine was either dead or trapped with no hope of rescue. Either way, she was gone. "The supplies," she said numbly. "We needed those supplies." "We got some." Kale gestured to the people who'd escaped, many carrying packs or dragging equipment. "Not everything, but enough to help." "Not enough to save everyone." "Maybe not, but enough to try." Rowan looked at the survivors, scared, cold, some injured, all staring at her like she had answers. 15 people, plus whatever they'd managed to carry. 5 miles back to the stronghold through the worst weather the frontier had ever seen. Impossible odds. Again. "Can you walk?" she asked Kyle. He nodded. "Then let's move. We've got people depending on us." They organized quickly. Rowan divided the group based on ability. Strongest in front to break trail, weakest in the middle protected from the wind, someone strong at the rear to catch stragglers. Kyle moved to walk beside her at the front. "You've done this before." "Survival logistics, yeah." "Leading people to their deaths through impossible conditions?" "That's a new one, but I'm flexible." He almost smiled. "I like you. You're completely insane, but I like you." "The feeling's mutual. Tell me about Silver Rock." As they pushed into the storm, Kyle told his story. How his pack had thrived until his second-in-command, a woman named Vera, decided she deserved to lead. How she'd poisoned the water supply and framed him for it. How the pack had turned on him, exiling him into the wilderness to die. "I survived," he said quietly. "And I spent the next year hunting down everyone involved, one by one." Revenge? Justice. Turns out Vera had been planning the coup for years, using syndicate resources. When I found proof, I brought it back to Silver Rock. And they didn't care. She'd consolidated power, purged the loyal, and convinced everyone I was the real threat. So I left. Started tracking syndicate operations, looking for others like her. Found me instead. Found you trying to save the people who imprisoned you. That's either stupid or noble. Haven't decided which. Can it be both? Probably is. They walked in silence for a while, fighting the wind. Around them, the other survivors struggled forward, linked together by rope to keep from getting separated. After what felt like hours, one of them collapsed. A woman in her 30s, shaking violently from hypothermia. "We need to stop," someone said. "Set up shelter." "We stop, we die," Rowan countered. "Everyone dies, we keep moving." "She can't!" Kale bent down, examining the woman. "Advanced hypothermia. If we don't warm her up, she'll be dead in minutes." Rowan looked around. Nothing but white chaos and wind. No shelter. No options. Then she remembered her second cache. The emergency shelter tarp. "Give me 5 minutes," she said. She found the cache using dead reckoning and sheer desperation, pulling out the reflective tarp. Kale helped her set it up, a tiny pocket of relative safety in the storm. They got the woman inside with 2 others to share body heat. Rowan used her last chemical heating packs to warm her core. "This is buying minutes, not hours," Kyle said quietly. "We can't save her and keep moving." "Then we split up. You take the main group, get them to the stronghold. I stay with her until she's stable, then follow." "That's suicide." "So is climbing into Seraphine's bunker. I'm on a roll." Kale grabbed her arm. "Rowan, you can't save everyone. Watch me." They stared at each other for a long moment. Then Kale nodded slowly. "You're completely insane," he said. "You already said that." Bears repeating. He gathered the other survivors and moved out, disappearing into the storm within seconds. Rowan sat in the tiny shelter with 3 people on the edge of death, listening to the wind scream murder, and wondered if this was the decision that would finally kill her. The woman's breathing stabilized after 20 minutes. Rowan forced warm liquid into her, monitored her vitals, did everything she'd learned from a decade of frontier survival. And when she was sure the woman would make it, she helped all 3 to their feet and pushed back into the storm. The journey blurred into endless white. Rowan's body moved on autopilot, following compass bearings, counting steps, refusing to stop because stopping meant dying. She lost track of time completely. Could have been hours, could have been days. Then, through the storm, she saw lights. The stronghold. Kyle had made it. They all had made it. Rowan pushed forward, dragging the 3 survivors with her. The massive doors opened and hands reached out, pulling them inside. Warmth. Voices. Someone wrapping blankets around her. She looked up and saw Kale's face, haggard but alive. "You did it," he said wonderingly. "You actually did it." "Did what?" "Saved us." Again. Rowan tried to respond, but her legs gave out. Strong arms caught her. Kale's arms, she realized distantly. "Easy," he said. "You're done. You can rest now." "The supplies, Marcus is distributing them. You got enough. Not everything we need, but enough." "Seraphine, dead, buried under tons of rock. It's over." Over. The word felt strange. Rowan let herself be carried to one of the warming stations. Around her, the pack moved with new energy. Hope where there had been despair. Organization where there had been chaos. Elena appeared, pressing a cup of hot broth into her hands. "You're insane. Completely, totally insane." "So I've been told. Also a hero. The pack's already talking about you like you're some kind of legend." "I'm just someone who is too stubborn to die. Sometimes that's all it takes." Marcus approached, his face grim. "We need to talk about what comes next." "Can it wait until I can feel my toes?" "No, because we've got a problem." He gestured toward the main hall where Kale stood, trying to address the pack. "The Alpha's authority is broken. Half the pack thinks he's weak for being manipulated by Seraphine. The other half blames him for not listening to you. Either way, his ability to lead is finished." "So what happens?" "Technically, the pack can call for new leadership. Alpha challenge. But in our current condition," Marcus shook his head, "it could tear us apart just when we need unity." Rowan looked across the hall at Kale. He met her eyes, and in that moment, she saw the truth. He knew. He knew his time as Alpha was over. The question was, what came next? And as she sat there, warming, finally returning to her frozen body, Rowan realized the real crisis wasn't the super freeze. It was what happened when the ice finally melted. The crisis meeting happened 3 hours after Rowan regained feeling in her extremities. Marcus had assembled what remained of the pack's leadership in the council chamber, those who'd survived Seraphine's purge and still commanded respect. 12 people total, including Kale, who sat at the head of the table looking like a man attending his own funeral. Rowan sat to his right, with Kyle standing behind her like a silent sentinel. The rogue Alpha had refused a seat, claiming he had no authority here, but his presence spoke louder than any title. "The supplies Rowan recovered will last us approximately 10 days, Marcus began without preamble. "Stretched thin? Maybe 12? The super freeze shows no signs of breaking. We need to discuss long-term survival strategies." "We need to discuss leadership," interrupted Gareth Stone, the pack's master of resources. He was 60, gray-haired, and had never liked Rowan. "The pack is in crisis, and our Alpha was manipulated by a traitor who nearly destroyed us all." "That raises questions." "What kind of questions?" Kale asked quietly. The kind that ask whether you're fit to continue leading. The room went silent. Everyone knew it was coming, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real. Kale met Gareth's eyes without flinching. You're right. I was manipulated. I ignored warnings. I imprisoned the one person trying to save us. My judgment was compromised and people died because of it. He stood, placing both hands flat on the table. I won't run from that. If the pack wants new leadership, I'll step aside. Murmurs around the table. Rowan studied their faces, some satisfied, some uncomfortable, all calculating. The problem, Sarah Kane said carefully, is timing. We're in the middle of a survival crisis. Alpha challenges during peacetime are brutal enough. During this? She shook her head. We'd be asking wolves to fight to the death when they can barely stand. Then what do you propose? Gareth demanded. Temporary emergency leadership. We table the alpha question until the freeze breaks, focus on survival now, address authority later. And who leads in the interim? Every eye in the room turned to Rowan. She held up her hands immediately. No, absolutely not. You've saved this pack twice in the last 48 hours, Sarah said. You predicted the super freeze. You exposed Seraphine's conspiracy. You walked through hell to bring back supplies. If anyone's earned the right to lead, I don't want to lead. I want to keep people alive. There's a difference. Is there? This from Marcus. Because from where I'm sitting, you've been leading since the moment you stepped out into that storm. That was survival logistics, not pack politics. Maybe that's exactly what we need right now. Someone who cares about survival more than politics. Rowan looked at Kale. The alpha's expression was complicated. Relief mixed with something that might have been gratitude or might have been shame. What do you think? She asked him. I think you should do it, he said quietly. Not because I want to abdicate responsibility, but because you're the person this pack needs right now. You see what others miss. You make hard choices without hesitation. You sacrifice for people who don't deserve it. He met her eyes. You're what I should have been. The words hung heavy in the air. I'm not pack, Rowan said. I don't have bloodline authority. Half of you still think I'm paranoid. The other half probably resents that I was right. You're not wrong, Gareth admitted grudgingly. But Sarah's also not wrong. You've proven yourself, not through politics or manipulation, but through action. I'll support it, Marcus said. Temporary emergency authority until the freeze breaks. Then we address the alpha question properly. Others nodded. The consensus was building. Rowan felt the weight of it settling on her shoulders like physical pressure. Leadership. Responsibility for 300 lives. The authority to make decisions that would save or doom them all. She looked at Kyle, who'd been silent throughout. He raised an eyebrow, expression unreadable. Don't look at me, he said. I'm just a ghost observing the living, but for what it's worth, you'd be an idiot to refuse, and you're not an idiot. Debatable, Rowan muttered. She turned back to the council. Fine, temporary authority, but I want it in writing that this is emergency leadership only, that Kale retains his alpha title, and that when this is over, the pack decides its future through proper channels. Agreed, Kale said immediately. And I want full autonomy on survival decisions. No council debates on ration distribution or shelter protocols. If I say something needs to happen, it happens. Gareth bristled. That's asking for dictatorial power. That's asking for the ability to keep everyone alive without arguing through bureaucracy while people freeze. You want democracy. Survive first. Then we'll debate. She's right, Sarah said. Emergency authority means emergency powers. We can establish oversight, require daily reports, but operational autonomy is essential. The debate continued for another hour, but the outcome was inevitable. By the end, Rowan found herself in nominal command of a pack she'd never wanted to lead, with authority she'd never sought, facing a crisis that would kill them all if she made a single wrong call. Perfect. One more thing, she said as the meeting wrapped up. We need to address Seraphine's followers, the ones who made it out of the bunker collapse. They're being held under guard, Marcus said, pending investigation. Release them. Everyone stared at her. They were manipulated, Rowan continued. Seraphine was good at that, finding people's weaknesses, exploiting their fears, making betrayal sound like loyalty. Most of them genuinely thought they were helping the pack. Some of them helped sabotage our food supplies, Gareth said coldly. That's not manipulation. That's treason. Then we investigate properly and punish the guilty. But collective punishment helps no one. We need every able body working together if we're going to survive. You're being soft, Gareth accused. I'm being practical. Revenge is a luxury we can't afford. She met Marcus's eyes. Release the ones who weren't directly involved in the sabotage. Put them to work. Watch them closely, but give them a chance to prove themselves. Marcus nodded slowly. I'll screen them personally. Anyone who can't be trusted stays confined. Fair enough. As the council dispersed, Cale lingered behind. Rowan waited, knowing this conversation was coming. Thank you, he said quietly, for not humiliating me. You could have. Would have been justified. What would that accomplish? You made mistakes. You'll live with them. That's punishment enough. Is it? His voice was raw. People died because I didn't listen to you. Children are orphaned. Families are broken. How do I live with that? The same way everyone lives with their failures, by doing better next time. Rowan turned to face him fully. You were a bad alpha because you were young, arrogant, and easily manipulated. But you're not beyond redemption. You admitted your mistakes publicly. You stepped aside when necessary. That takes strength. Or weakness. There's nothing weak about acknowledging when you're wrong. Seraphine couldn't do it. That's why she died buried under rock, and you're still here. Cale looked at her for a long moment. When this is over, I'm going to challenge for Alpha properly. Earn it through strength, not birthright. Good. The pack deserves a leader who had to fight for it. And if I lose, then someone stronger leads. That's how it should work. He almost smiled. You really don't want power, do you? I want people to survive. If power helps with that, I'll use it. But the moment it becomes about the power itself, I'm done. After Kyle left, Kyle emerged from the shadows where he'd been listening. Interesting philosophy, he said. Power is a tool, not a goal. You disagree? No, just rare to see someone actually mean it. He leaned against the wall. Most people who claim they don't want power are lying to themselves. You're not. Is that a compliment? Observation. I don't do compliments. Noted. Rowan gathered the supply manifests Marcus had left for her. What about you? What's your plan when this is over? Keep hunting syndicate operations. Keep finding packs Seraphine's kind are destroying. Keep being a pain in their collective ass. Sounds lonely. It is. He met her eyes. But someone has to do it. You could stay. Help rebuild. I'm not a joiner, and this pack doesn't need another alpha complicating things. What if they need a fighter? Someone who knows how to survive impossible odds? Cale's expression shifted, something almost vulnerable flickering across his face before the mask returned. We'll see. First, let's make sure there's a pack left to rebuild. The next 72 hours tested every survival skill Rowan had ever learned. She divided the pack into functional units. Heating teams to maintain the fires, supply teams to ration and distribute resources, medical teams to monitor the vulnerable, security teams to maintain order. Every person had a role. Every role was essential, and anyone who couldn't contribute was assigned to rest and recovery until they could. The stronghold became a machine of survival, every part working in brutal efficiency. But it wasn't enough. On the third day, they lost their first child to hypothermia. A little girl, maybe 6 years old, who'd been sick before the freeze and couldn't generate enough body heat to survive. She died wrapped in blankets near one of the fires, her mother holding her and screaming. Rowan stood in the hallway outside, fists clenched, fighting tears. Cale found her there. He didn't say anything, just stood beside her in silence. I did everything right, Rowan said finally. Rationed perfectly, optimized heating distribution, monitored everyone's vitals. Everything by the book, and she still died. Some people die no matter what you do. That's not failure, that's reality. She was 6 years old. I know. I should have, What? Magically created more heat? Conjured supplies from nothing? You're good, Rowan, but you're not a miracle worker. She turned on him. Then what good am I? What's the point of all this? The planning, the preparation, the sacrifice? If children still die? The point is the ones who live. The 299 people still breathing because you refuse to give up. That little girl's death is tragic, but it's one tragedy, not 300. That's what you accomplished. Rowan wanted to hit him, wanted to scream, wanted to do anything except accept that he was right. Instead, she went back to work. The funeral was held that evening. Simple, quick, necessary. They couldn't afford prolonged mourning. Every minute spent grieving was a minute not spent surviving. But as Rowan watched the mother's face, empty with loss, she made herself remember. This was what failure looked like. This was the cost of mistakes. She wouldn't let it happen again. On day 5, the outer walls began to crack. The temperature had dropped so low that the stone itself was contracting, creating fractures in the stronghold's structure. Marcus discovered it during a routine inspection, hairline cracks spreading through the eastern wall like frozen lightning. "How bad?" Rowan asked, studying the damage. "Bad. If the temperature drops any further, we could have a complete structural failure. The wall could collapse. Options? Reinforce from the inside, but we'd need timber or metal supports. We don't have enough." "What about the old mining tunnels? There were support beams down there." Marcus looked at her like she'd suggested mining the moon. "Those tunnels are unstable, haven't been maintained in decades. Anyone going down there is gambling with cave-ins. Anyone staying here is gambling with wall collapse. At least in the tunnels, we control the risk. You want to risk lives to maybe reinforce a wall that might not fail. I want to make sure we have options when it does fail." They assembled a team: Rowan, Cale, Marcus, and 4 volunteers. The descent into the mining tunnels was like entering another world, colder than the stronghold above, but eerily quiet. The wind couldn't reach down here. Their lights revealed a maze of passages carved a century ago, lined with timber supports that had somehow survived. Old-growth wood, hard as iron, perfect for reinforcement. "Start pulling beams," Rowan ordered. "Anything that's not load-bearing, we take up." They worked in silence, the only sounds the creak of old wood and the scrape of timber against stone. Around them, the tunnels stretched into darkness, a forgotten world beneath the frozen one above. Rowan was examining a particularly large beam when she heard it, breathing, not from her team, something else, something deeper in the tunnels. She held up a hand for silence. Everyone froze. The breathing continued, ragged, pained, barely audible. "There's someone down here," she whispered. Cale moved to her side, weapon drawn. Together they followed the sound deeper into the tunnels, the rest of the team behind them. The passage opened into a natural cavern, and there, collapsed against the far wall, was a figure in tattered cold-weather gear. Seraphine. She was barely alive. Blood caked her face from a head wound. Her left leg was bent at an unnatural angle. Ice crusted her hair and clothes, but she was breathing. "Impossible," Marcus breathed. "The bunker collapsed. We saw it." "Must have made it into the tunnel system before the final collapse," Cale said. "Been down here for days." Seraphine's eyes cracked open, unfocused. She saw Rowan and something like a smile crossed her ruined face. "Come to gloat?" she rasped. "Come for timber," Rowan said flatly. "Finding you is just bad luck." "Going to kill me?" "No." "Why not? I tried to destroy your pack, your people, everything you care about." Rowan crouched down, meeting Seraphine's eyes. "Because I'm not you. I don't kill defenseless enemies. I don't sabotage people who can't fight back. I don't sacrifice the innocent for power." "Then you're weak. And you're dying." Rowan stood. "Marcus, get her out of here. Medical team can stabilize her. Then she faces justice." "Justice?" Seraphine laughed, the sound wet and painful. "What justice? You going to execute me? Exile me? I'm already dead, Rowan. This cold, this pack, it's all dead. You're just too stubborn to see it." "The pack's still breathing. That's more than you'll be able to say soon." They carried Seraphine up on a makeshift stretcher, along with the salvaged timber. The medical team set her broken leg and bandaged her wounds, but the prognosis was grim. Internal injuries, severe frostbite, possible brain trauma from the head wound. She'd live, probably, but she'd never be whole again. Word spread through the stronghold within hours. Seraphine found alive. The architect of their suffering, broken but breathing. The pack's reaction was immediate and violent. "Execute her. She deserves to freeze like she made us freeze." "Justice for the children she killed." Rowan stood before the crowd, holding up her hands for silence. It took several minutes before the shouting died down enough for her to speak. "I understand your anger," she said. "I feel it too.
Seraphine sabotaged our supplies, manipulated our alpha, and condemned innocent people to death. She deserves punishment. Roars of agreement. But we are not murderers. We are not a mob.
We survive because we maintain order, because we hold ourselves to standards that separate us from the chaos outside. She gestured toward the frozen wasteland beyond their walls. Out there, might makes right. Strength is the only law. If we become that, if we let rage dictate justice, we're no different than the freeze itself, just another killing force. She didn't give our children mercy, someone shouted. No, she didn't, and that's exactly why we have to be better than her. Rowan's voice hardened. Seraphine will face trial, a proper trial, with evidence and testimony and a chance to defend herself. Then the pack will vote on her punishment. Not mob justice, not revenge, actual justice. And if we vote for execution, then she'll be executed. But it will be a decision made collectively, calmly, with full understanding of what it means. Not a lynching born from grief and rage. The crowd muttered, unsatisfied but unable to argue the logic. Gareth stepped forward. When does this trial happen? When the freeze breaks. When we're safe. When we can think clearly instead of reacting from fear. She could die before then. Then she dies. But on her own terms, not ours. It wasn't a satisfying answer, but it was the right one, and enough people recognized that to maintain order. The crowd dispersed slowly, anger simmering but controlled. Elena approached as the hall emptied. You're making enemies with that decision. I'm making the right decision. That's more important. Is it? Because the pack wanted blood. You denied them. That breeds resentment. Let them resent me. As long as they survive to do it, I'll sleep fine. On day 8, the eastern wall cracked completely. The sound was like a gunshot, echoing through the stronghold. A fracture 3 feet wide opened in the stone, spiderwebbing across the entire wall. Rowan was there within minutes, Marcus and a repair team behind her. The timber supports, she ordered. Install them now. Brace the entire section. They worked through the night, using the beams they'd salvaged from the mining tunnels. The work was brutal, lifting massive timbers into position, securing them against stone, all while the temperature dropped and the wall groaned under stress. But it held. By dawn, the wall was reinforced. Ugly, precarious, but functional. The pack gathered to watch the sun rise. Not that they could see it through the storm, but the chronometer said it was morning, and that was close enough. We've lasted 8 days, Marcus said quietly. Longer than I thought possible. We'll last longer, Rowan replied. The supplies are running out. Then we'll find more. Where? We've salvaged everything from the bunker, scavenged every resource in the stronghold. There's nothing left. Rowan looked at him. Then we'll make something from nothing. That's what we do. That's not realistic. Neither is surviving negative 60-degree temperatures with 300 people and limited supplies. But we're doing it anyway. Marcus almost smiled. You really don't know when to quit, do you? Never learned how. The next day brought an unexpected development. One of the scouts monitoring the outer perimeter reported something impossible. The temperature was rising. Not much, just a few degrees. But after 8 days of steady decline, any change was significant. Rowan checked the readings herself. Negative 62. Yesterday it had been negative 65. The day before, negative 67. The super freeze was breaking. How long until it's safe to travel, she asked. The scout shook his head. Could be days, could be weeks. Super freezes don't break cleanly. They stutter. Temperature will rise and fall unpredictably before stabilizing. But it's breaking. Yes? Eventually, Rowan felt something loosen in her chest. Hope. Actual, genuine hope. They were going to make it. She called an assembly that evening. The entire pack gathered in the main hall, faces gaunt from rationing, bodies weary from constant cold, but still alive. Still fighting. The temperature is rising, she announced. The super freeze is breaking. We're going to survive this. The reaction was subdued. People were too exhausted for celebration. But smiles appeared, hands clasped, hope spread like warmth. We still have hard days ahead, Rowan continued. The freeze won't end overnight. We need to maintain discipline, continue rationing, stay vigilant, but the worst is behind us. What happens when it ends? Someone asked. What happens to you? The question hung in the air. When it ends, you choose your alpha properly. Through tradition, through strength, through whatever means your culture demands. My authority was temporary. It expires when the emergency does. And if we want you to stay? Rowan looked at the crowd. 300 faces, each one a life she'd fought to preserve. People who'd scorned her, imprisoned her, left her to die. And people who'd supported her, believed in her, followed her into hell. That's not my decision to make, she said quietly. It's yours. As it should be. The assembly ended without resolution. The question of leadership would wait until survival was certain. On day 10, Kael found Rowan on the observation platform where this had all begun. Couldn't sleep? He asked. Too much thinking. About? What comes next, after the freeze? Kael leaned against the railing beside her. You've got options. Stay and lead, leave and rest, find a new pack, start over somewhere else. What would you do? I'd leave. But I'm not you. What's that mean? Means you actually care about these people. Despite everything they did to you, you still care. That kind of loyalty is rare. He paused. It's also dangerous because it makes you vulnerable to being hurt again. Speaking from experience? Always. They stood in silence, watching the storm. It was quieter now, still dangerous, but less apocalyptic. The wind had teeth, but they weren't as sharp. I'm leaving when this ends, Kael said quietly. Back to hunting syndicate operations. But I wanted you to know, if you ever need someone who understands what it's like to be betrayed by people you'd die for, I'll answer. Rowan looked at him. That's the closest thing to friendship I've heard from you. Don't push it. She smiled. Thank you for everything, for showing up when you did, for having my back when no one else would. You had your own back. I just watched. Liar. Fine. I helped a little. The moment stretched between them, something more than alliance, less than romance, but significant in ways neither wanted to examine too closely. Then Kael straightened. Temperature's rising faster, another 2 degrees since yesterday. How can you tell? The ice on the railing, it's starting to sublimate instead of accumulating. Rowan checked. He was right. The endless buildup of ice had stopped. Small victory, but real. We're going to make it, she said. Never doubted it. Liar? That too. On day 12, the superfreeze broke completely. The temperature rose to -40, then -30. The wind died to normal storm levels. Snow fell in flakes instead of walls. It was still deadly outside. Still dangerous. But survivable. The pack emerged from the stronghold in small groups, testing the new reality. Some cried. Some laughed. Some just stood in the snow, feeling the not quite as lethal cold and marveling that they'd lived through it. Rowan stood among them, watching 300 survivors celebrate life. Marcus approached, his face serious. The council wants to meet. About leadership. Now? We just survived the worst crisis in pack history. Can't it wait? That's exactly why it can't wait. The pack needs to know what comes next, who leads, what structure we operate under. He paused. They want you to stay. As what? Alpha. They're going to ask you to challenge for it properly. Rowan closed her eyes. She'd known this was coming, but hearing it spoken made it real. And if I refuse? Then Kael challenges, probably wins, and we're back where we started, minus the sociopathic mate. There are others, Sarah, you, people who could lead. None of whom walked through a super freeze to save the pack. None of whom exposed a conspiracy and brought back supplies and held everything together when it should have fallen apart. Marcus met her eyes. You don't want power. That's exactly why you should have it. Before Rowan could respond, a commotion erupted near the main gates. Voices raised in alarm. Movement. Then someone shouting her name. She ran. The crowd parted to reveal 2 figures at the gate. Scouts, barely standing, covered in ice and blood. Raiders, one gasped. Coming from the south, armed, 40, maybe 50. They're taking advantage of the freeze aftermath, hitting weakened packs, stealing supplies. How far? Rowan demanded. 8 hours. Maybe less. The crowd went silent. They'd survived the super freeze, but the crisis wasn't over. It was just beginning. 8 hours wasn't enough time. Not to rest, not to recover, not to prepare 300 exhausted survivors for a fight against fresh raiders who'd spent the super freeze safe and well fed while waiting for easy prey. But 8 hours was what they had. How many fighters can we field? Rowan asked Marcus as they strode toward the armory. Maybe 60 who aren't compromised by frostbite or exhaustion. Another 40 who can hold a position but shouldn't be in active combat. He pulled open the armory door. We're outgunned and outmanned. Then we don't fight them head on. Rowan surveyed the weapons, spears, rifles, bows, the accumulated arsenal of a frontier pack. We use terrain, traps, and the fact that they think we're weak. Kael appeared in the doorway. They're not entirely wrong. Your people are running on fumes. My people survived the impossible. That counts for something. Counts for exhaustion that makes you vulnerable. He moved to examine the rifles. These raiders, you know anything about them? Black Ridge Syndicate, the scout said weakly. He was being treated by the medical team but had insisted on briefing them personally. I recognized their markings, same ones who sold Seraphine the chemical accelerants. Kael's expression went cold. Then they're professionals, not just opportunistic scavengers, actual military-trained raiders who specialize in hitting weakened targets. Great, Rowan muttered. Any good news? They'll be cautious. They know packs fight hardest when defending their home ground. They'll probe first, test your defenses, look for weakness before committing to a full assault. How long do we have before the probing starts? 4 hours? Maybe 5. Rowan's mind raced through scenarios, tactics, the impossible mathematics of defending against superior forces. The stronghold's walls were reinforced but damaged. They had limited ammunition. Most of their fighters were barely standing, but they had something the raiders didn't. They had everything to lose. Marcus, I need the council assembled in 10 minutes. Every fighter capable of holding a weapon in 20. And get me detailed maps of the approach routes to the stronghold. What are you planning? To make them regret choosing us as prey. The council chamber filled quickly. Rowan spread maps across the table, marking approach routes with quick, efficient strokes. The raiders will come from the south, she began. It's the easiest terrain, the most direct route. They'll expect us to fortify the main gates and wait for siege. That's standard defensive doctrine, Gareth said. What else would we do? We don't wait. We hit them before they reach us. Silence fell across the chamber. That's suicide, someone said. We're exhausted, they're fresh. We fight on their terms, we die. We fight on our terms. Rowan pointed to a narrow canyon 2 miles south of the stronghold. This is the only viable approach route. Steep walls, limited visibility, natural choke point. We turn it into a killing ground. Kael leaned forward, studying the map. An ambush. Use the terrain to negate their numerical advantage. Exactly. We position archers on the canyon walls, set up barriers to funnel them into kill zones, and hit them hard before they know we're there. And when they retreat and regroup? Sarah asked. They won't retreat, not initially. These are professionals who've been waiting weeks for easy targets. They'll push through the first resistance, expecting us to break. Rowan met each council member's eyes. That's when we hit them with the second wave. Close quarters, brutal and fast, designed to create chaos and panic. You're gambling that we can break their morale before they break ours, Marcus said. Yes. And if we can't? Then we fall back to the stronghold and make them bleed for every inch of ground. But I don't plan to let it come to that. Kael spoke from his position against the wall. It could work. Syndicate raiders are used to overwhelming weak targets. They're not used to actual resistance. Hit them hard enough, fast enough, and they'll reassess whether the spoils are worth the cost. Or they'll get angry and commit fully to destroying us, Gareth countered, which is why the ambush has to be devastating, not just a setback, a massacre that makes them question everything. The council debated for another 15 minutes, but the conclusion was inevitable. They had no good options, only variations of desperate gambles. We do it, Kael said finally. Rowan's plan gives us the best chance. The vote was unanimous. Rowan assembled the fighters in the main hall, 60 frontline combatants and 40 support personnel. They looked like survivors of an apocalypse, which they were. Gaunt faces, hollow eyes, bodies pushed beyond normal limits. But they were standing, still fighting. I'm not going to pretend this will be easy, Rowan began. You're exhausted, you're depleted. You just survived something that should have killed us all. And now I'm asking you to fight again. Murmurs through the crowd. Not rebellion, just acknowledgement of the brutal truth. These raiders are counting on us being weak, being broken, being easy prey. She let that hang for a moment. They're wrong. Yes, we're tired. Yes, we're hurt. But we're also survivors of the worst super freeze in over a century. We walked through hell and came out the other side. These raiders? They sat safe somewhere while we suffered. They have no idea what we're capable of. They outnumber us 2-1, someone called out. They do. But we have something they don't. We're fighting for home, for pack, for the people we love who are sheltering behind these walls. Rowan's voice hardened. They're fighting for stolen supplies and easy money. That's not the same. That will never be the same. She could see it working, spine straightening, eyes focusing, exhaustion being pushed aside by purpose. We're going to hit them where they don't expect it, how they don't expect it. We're going to show them that Thornridge Pack doesn't break. We don't surrender. We don't die quietly. She raised her voice. We survived the super freeze. We'll survive this too. Who's with me? The response was a roar that shook the hall. 3 hours later, Rowan crouched on a narrow ledge overlooking the canyon, watching the southern approach through binoculars. Beside her, Cale checked his rifle for the third time. Movement. Half a mile out. Rowan adjusted her view. There. A line of figures moving through the snow. 47 raiders in military formation, armed with automatic weapons, moving with the confidence of professionals who'd done this before. She keyed her radio. All units, this is command. Enemy in sight. Hold positions until my signal. Acknowledgements crackled back. Marcus commanding the archers on the eastern wall. Sarah leading the close quarters team hidden in the rocks. Cale with the reserve force ready to reinforce wherever needed. The raiders entered the canyon, spreading into a loose formation designed to watch for ambush. Smart, experienced, but not smart enough. Rowan waited until they were fully committed, the entire force within the kill zone. Then she keyed the radio. Light them up. Arrows fell like rain from the canyon walls. Not the random scatter of panicked defenders, but controlled volleys from archers who'd trained their entire lives for frontier warfare. Raiders dropped, shouted commands, weapons came up, firing at the walls. And the close quarters teams hit from behind. Sarah's fighters emerged from concealed positions in the rocks, closing the trap. Spears and blades against rifles in tight spaces where shooting your own people was as likely as hitting the enemy. Chaos erupted. The raiders were good. They didn't break immediately. Their leader, a scarred woman with a mechanical eye, shouted orders that rallied her people into defensive positions. Fall back! Form defensive square! But Rowan had anticipated that. The barriers she'd ordered placed in the canyon weren't just obstacles. They were explosives. Chemical charges scavenged from the mining tunnels, placed strategically to create secondary kill zones. She triggered the first one remotely. The explosion shattered the defensive formation. Raiders scattered, organization breaking into survival instinct. Second wave, move in, Rowan commanded. Cale's reserve force hit from the north, cutting off the retreat path. Now the raiders were surrounded, fighting on all sides, taking casualties from enemies they couldn't see or predict. The scarred leader tried to rally them. Hold formation. Concentrate fire on... An arrow took her in the throat. She went down hard. Without their commander, the raiders broke. Some tried to fight. Others tried to run. Most just tried to survive. Rowan gave them 30 seconds of chaos. Then she triggered the final explosive charge. Not to kill, but to signal. The blast echoed through the canyon like thunder. Cease fire, she shouted into the radio. All units, cease fire. The shooting stopped. The sudden silence was almost worse than the noise had been. Rowan stood up on her ledge, fully visible now, rifle lowered but ready. You came here thinking we'd be easy prey, she called down. You were wrong. The surviving raiders, maybe 25 of them, stared up at her. Some wounded, all terrified. You have two choices, Rowan continued. Walk away now, leave your weapons, and never come back, or stay and die. Your leader's already dead. Your advantage is gone. This is your only chance to live. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then one raider dropped his rifle and ran. Another followed. Then 5 more. The rout was total. Within minutes, all surviving raiders were fleeing south, leaving their weapons and dead behind. Rowan watched them go, then keyed the radio. All units, stand down. Do not pursue. I repeat, do not pursue. Marcus's voice came back. Are you sure? We could finish them. No. Let them spread the word. Let every raider crew from here to the Southern Territories know that Thornridge Pack is not an easy target. She climbed down from the ledge. The canyon floor was carnage. Bodies, blood, abandoned weapons. The cost of survival. Her fighters emerged from their positions, faces grim but victorious. They'd lost 3. The raiders had lost 22. Not a fair trade, but a necessary one. Kale found her standing over the raider leader's body. You fought well. We survived. That's different than fighting well. Is it? He gestured to the fleeing raiders. You broke a professional military unit with exhausted defenders on their last legs. That's more than survival. That's dominance. Rowan looked at the scattered weapons, the abandoned supplies the raiders had brought. Gather everything. Weapons, food, equipment. We can use all of it. As her fighters began salvage operations, Kale approached. That was brilliant, he said quietly. Brutal, but brilliant. It was necessary. It was leadership. He met her eyes. The pack sees that now. Everyone sees it. I did what anyone would do. No. You did what a true alpha does, made the hard choice, took the risk, and brought everyone home alive. He paused. The council is calling for a vote tonight, on permanent leadership. Kale, I'm withdrawing my claim, formally, publicly. His voice was steady, certain. I was born to this, but you earned it. There's a difference. Rowan wanted to argue, but the exhaustion was finally catching up. She'd been running on adrenaline and desperation for 12 days. Now, with the crisis finally over, her body was demanding payment. Can it wait until tomorrow? She asked. I can barely stand. No, the pack needs closure, needs to know what comes next. Kale's expression softened. But you don't have to stand for the ceremony. We can bring the council to you. That's not how it's done. Screw how it's done. You just saved us twice in 2 weeks. If anyone's earned the right to sit down during a ceremony, it's you. Despite everything, Rowan smiled. You're learning. I'm trying. The vote took place at sunset in the main hall. The entire pack assembled. Every survivor of the super freeze, every fighter from the ambush, every person whose life Rowan had saved through stubbornness and skill. She stood before them, swaying slightly from exhaustion, Kyle at her right shoulder and Elena at her left. Gareth stepped forward as the senior council member. Rowan Vance, you were granted temporary emergency authority 12 days ago to guide the pack through the super freeze. In that time, you have proven yourself through action, sacrifice, and unwavering commitment to pack survival. The crisis has ended, he continued. Your emergency authority expires, but the pack has a choice to make. Who will lead us forward? The council has voted unanimously to offer you permanent alpha authority. Not temporary, not conditional. Full leadership of Thornridge Pack, with all rights and responsibilities that entails. Rowan felt the weight of 300 pairs of eyes. But the decision is not the council's alone, Gareth said. Pack law requires that any alpha claim be confirmed by the pack itself. So we put it to you, all of you. Who speaks for Rowan Vance? Marcus stepped forward immediately. I do. She led when others failed. She saved lives when others only thought of themselves. She has my loyalty. Sarah followed. And mine. She made the hard choices without hesitation. That's what leadership is. Elena joined them. She cared when others didn't. She saw people, not numbers. She has my support. Then Kale stepped forward and the hall went silent. I was born to lead, he said quietly. Raised for it, trained for it, given every advantage. He paused. And I failed. I let pride blind me, let manipulation guide me, let my people suffer because I was too weak to admit I was wrong. Rowan Vance had none of those advantages, no bloodline, no training, no authority, just knowledge, courage, and an absolute refusal to give up on people who'd given up on her. His voice strengthened. That's not just leadership. That's what alpha should mean. She has my loyalty, completely, without reservation. One by one, pack members stepped forward, fighters who'd followed her into battle, families she'd kept fed during the freeze, children she'd saved from hypothermia, The tide became a wave, became an overwhelming flood of support. When the last person had spoken, Gareth turned to Rowan. The pack has spoken. Do you accept Alpha authority over Thornridge? Rowan looked at the faces before her, people who'd scorned her, imprisoned her, left her to die, and then learned that survival sometimes requires following the person everyone wants to ignore. On one condition, she said. Name it. The old leadership structure is broken. Too centralized, too dependent on one person's judgment. I want a true council, not just advisors, but actual co-leaders with authority to check my decisions. She met Kale's eyes, including the former Alpha as head of security and tradition, because his mistakes don't erase his strengths, and we need both. Kale looked startled. You want me on the council? After everything? I want people who failed and learned from it. They make better decisions than people who've never been tested. She turned to Marcus. I want the head of security to have full autonomy over pack defense. Sarah leads resource management with complete authority. Elena handles logistics and supply chains. She continued naming positions, distributing power instead of hoarding it, building a structure designed to prevent any single person from nearly destroying them again. When she finished, Gareth was almost smiling. That's not traditional. Traditional almost got us killed. I'm done with traditional. The council accepts these terms, Marcus said. Does the pack? The roar of approval shook the walls. Gareth raised his hand for silence. Then by pack law, by council vote, and by unanimous consent, I declare Rowan Vance as Alpha of Thornridge Pack. May she lead with wisdom, courage, and the strength she's already proven. The ceremonial words felt strange. Rowan had never wanted this, never sought power, never craved authority. But standing there, looking at people she'd kept alive through sheer stubborn refusal to accept defeat, she felt something shift. Not desire for power, but acceptance of responsibility. I accept, she said quietly, and I swear to serve this pack with everything I am. To make the hard choices. To never lie to you about danger. To listen when I'm wrong and act when I'm right. And to step aside the moment I'm no longer worthy. She paused, then added, I'm not perfect. I'll make mistakes, but I'll make them honestly, and I'll own them completely. That's all I can promise. The pack accepted. Not with wild celebration, everyone was too exhausted for that, but with quiet satisfaction, with relief that the question was finally settled. The ceremony ended. People dispersed to eat, rest, begin the slow process of rebuilding. Rowan found herself alone in the council chamber, staring at the Alpha's chair like it might bite. Having second thoughts? Kale's voice came from the doorway. Third, fourth, and fifth thoughts. Good. Leaders who don't question themselves are dangerous. He entered, moving to stand beside her. You meant what you said, about distributing power. Yes? That's rare. Most people who fight that hard for authority want to keep it. I fought to save lives, not collect power. Now that I have it, I'm going to use it to make sure no one person can do what Seraphine did. Rowan turned to face him. What about you? You're leaving. Tomorrow. There are other packs out there, other Seraphines plotting. Someone has to stop them. You could stop them from here. Build something instead of just tearing down threats. Kale was quiet for a long moment. I'm not built for building. I'm built for hunting, for tracking, for destroying the kind of people who prey on the weak. We could use someone like that, permanently. You already have Marcus for security. I'm not offering you security. I'm offering you a home, a place to come back to between hunts, people who understand what you've been through. She met his eyes. You don't have to be alone just because you were betrayed. Something flickered across his face, vulnerability, hope, fear, all mixed together. I'll think about it, he said finally. That's all I ask. He moved to leave, then paused at the doorway. For what it's worth, you're going to be a great Alpha. Not because you want it, but because you earned it the hard way. Coming from you, that actually means something. Don't let it go to your head. After he left, Rowan sat in the Alpha's chair. It didn't feel natural, probably never would, but it felt right. The next morning brought sunshine. Actual, genuine sunshine breaking through the storm clouds for the first time in 2 weeks. The temperature was still below freezing, but the wind had died, the snow had stopped, and the frontier was remembering how to be merely harsh instead of apocalyptic. Rowan stood on the observation platform, watching the pack emerge to see the sun. Children laughing, adults crying with relief. Everyone just standing in the light, remembering what warmth felt like. Elena joined her, holding 2 cups of hot tea. Thought you might need this. You're a lifesaver. I'm really not. That's your job now. Elena sipped her own tea. How does it feel? Terrifying, heavy, like I'm one mistake away from disaster. So, like leadership. Yeah. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the pack below. You know what the best part is? Elena said. You proved everyone wrong. Every person who dismissed you as paranoid. Every council member who ignored your warnings. Every pack member who thought you were crazy. You proved all of them wrong by being right when it mattered most. I don't care about being right. I care about people being alive. That's why they follow you. Because you actually mean that. Movement caught Rowan's eye. Kael crossing the courtyard with a pack on his back, leaving, as he'd said. But he stopped at the gates, turned back, and looked up at the observation platform. Even from a distance, Rowan could see the question in his posture. She raised her hand in farewell and acknowledgement. Not goodbye, just recognition that some people need to wander before they can settle. He nodded once, then disappeared into the recovering wilderness. Think he'll come back? Elena asked. Probably. Eventually. People like him always do. They just need to prove to themselves that leaving is a choice, not a requirement. The day passed in reconstruction. Damage assessment, supply inventory, all the practical work of rebuilding after crisis. Rowan moved through it in her new role, making decisions, settling disputes, guiding the pack toward normalcy. It was exhausting in a completely different way than survival had been. But it was also satisfying. That evening, the medical team reported that Seraphine had stabilized enough for interrogation. Rowan went to see her, bringing Marcus for witness. The former Alpha's mate looked like a broken doll, bandaged, splinted, barely conscious, but her eyes were still sharp when Rowan entered. Come to gloat? Seraphine rasped. Come to tell you what happens next. Rowan pulled up a chair. When you're strong enough to stand trial, you'll face the pack. They'll hear all the evidence, the syndicate records, the testimony from your followers, everything. Then they'll vote on your punishment. And then you'll execute me. Maybe. That's their choice, not mine. Seraphine laughed, the sound wet and pained. You actually believe that. You actually think justice means something. It does. That's the difference between you and me. The difference between us is that I'm honest about what power is. You still think it's about serving people. It's not. It's about controlling them. Then I'll control them by serving their interests instead of mine. Watch and see how that works out. Rowan stood to leave. You'll fail, Seraphine called after her. Give it time. The pressure, the responsibility, the weight of making life or death choices, it'll break you. And when it does, you'll understand why I did what I did. Rowan paused at the door. I survived the super freeze. I walked through hell for people who'd abandoned me. I fought raiders on no sleep and won. If you think leadership is going to break me after all that, you really don't know me at all. She left without looking back. 3 weeks later, Thornridge Pack gathered for Seraphine's trial. The evidence was overwhelming. The syndicate records Kael had recovered. Testimony from her followers about the sabotage. The medical team's report on how she'd deliberately destroyed the food supplies. Seraphine didn't deny any of it. I did what was necessary, she said from her wheelchair, legs still in a cast. The pack was weak. I made it strong. You killed innocent people, Sarah countered. I culled the weak. There's a difference. The pack voted. Not unanimously. There were those who believed exile was sufficient punishment, who couldn't bring themselves to vote for execution. But the majority ruled death. Rowan had expected to feel satisfaction. Instead, she just felt tired. The pack has spoken, she said quietly. Seraphine Ashford, you are sentenced to death by exposure. You will be taken beyond the territory and left to the frontier. If you survive, you're free. If you die, it's the wilderness that kills you, not us. It was the traditional punishment for the worst crimes, leaving justice to the frontier itself. Seraphine smiled. That's almost poetic. The cold I tried to weaponize becomes my executioner. The frontier's been executing people since long before you tried to control it, Rowan replied. It'll still be doing it long after you're forgotten. 2 days later, they carried out the sentence. Rowan insisted on doing it herself, refused to delegate the responsibility. They left Seraphine 20 miles south, in territory where no pack claimed dominion. Gave her basic supplies, basic clothing, a basic chance. What she did with that chance was her own business. As they rode back to the stronghold, Marcus asked the question Rowan had been avoiding. Do you think she'll survive? Honestly? No. But that's between her and the frontier now. You're more merciful than she deserved. Maybe. But mercy is what separates us from people like her. I won't lose that just because it's inconvenient. Spring came slowly to the frontier that year. The super freeze had damaged the ecosystem in ways that would take years to fully heal. But life persisted, as it always did. Thornridge Pack rebuilt. Stronger walls, better supply systems, distributed leadership that prevented any single point of failure. And under Rowan's guidance, they thrived. Other packs heard the story. The analyst who'd predicted disaster, been imprisoned for it, and then saved everyone despite their betrayal. The legend spread across the frontier territories. Offers came, alliances, trade agreements, marriage proposals, which Rowan declined with varying degrees of politeness. She had work to do. 6 months after the super freeze, Kyle returned. Rowan was reviewing supply manifests when Elena burst into her office. You have a visitor, says you're expecting him, though I know for a fact you're not. Rowan looked up. Who? Kale walked in, looking exactly the same except for a new scar across his jaw. Told you I'd think about it, he said. Rowan felt something warm bloom in her chest. And? Turns out hunting syndicate operations is lonely work, and I'm tired of being alone. He paused. If the offer's still open. What offer? Home. A place to come back to. People who understand. Rowan stood, moving around the desk. The offer's open, but I should warn you, we've got a council now. Distributed leadership. You'd have to actually work with others instead of lone wolfing every mission. I can work with others. I just prefer not to. Not good enough. If you're joining this pack, you're joining the new structure. That means cooperation, transparency, and accepting when your ideas get outvoted. Kale studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled, genuine, warm, something she'd never seen from him before. You really have changed this place. I'm trying, still a work in progress. Aren't we all? He extended his hand. All right, I'm in. Official pack member, council position if you'll have me, the whole thing. Rowan shook his hand. Welcome home. Feels weird saying this, but it's good to be home. That night, the pack gathered for a celebration. Not of victory, they'd had enough of those. Just of survival, of community, of making it through the darkness into something better. Rowan stood on the observation platform where this had all begun, looking down at her pack, her people, her responsibility. Kyle joined her, holding 2 cups of something that definitely wasn't just tea. To surviving, he said, raising his cup. To more than surviving, Rowan countered, to building something worth surviving for. They drank. I've been thinking, Kale said quietly, about what you said during the crisis, about leaders who've failed being better than those who haven't been tested. Still believe that. I know, and I'm grateful for it, because it means I get to learn, to grow, to become the leader I should have been from the beginning. He met her eyes. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason to. You made mistakes, but you owned them. That counts for a lot. Does it count enough? We'll find out. Leadership's not a destination. It's a constant test. We both fail sometimes. The key is failing forward instead of just failing. Failing forward, Kale repeated. I like that. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the pack below. Families laughing, children playing, people living instead of just surviving. You know what the best part is? Kale said. 6 months ago, I would have seen this gathering as a political necessity, a performance to maintain authority. Now I see it for what it is, people being happy, together, safe. That's growth. It's your influence. It's you learning to see people instead of assets. Rowan smiled. Keep that perspective and you'll be a great alpha someday. I thought you were the alpha now. I am, But leadership's not forever. Someday I'll step aside, and whoever comes next needs to be ready. Could be you. Could be someone we haven't met yet. Either way, we build the foundation now so the future has something solid to stand on. Down below, Elena was organizing some kind of game that involved children trying to knock adults into snowdrifts. Laughter echoed through the stronghold. They're happy, Kale observed. Actually, genuinely happy. When was the last time you saw that? Before Seraphine. Maybe before my time entirely. Rowan felt satisfaction settle deep in her bones. We did that. Built something worth protecting instead of just protecting what we had. You did that. I'm just learning from your example. We did that, Rowan insisted. All of us. Together. That's what makes it worth something. Commotion near the gates drew their attention. Riders approaching, a diplomatic delegation from Medical Valley Pack. Duty calls, Rowan said, setting down her cup. Time to be alpha again. Want company? Always. They descended together, leader and student, alpha and former alpha, two people who'd learned that strength wasn't about never falling. It was about getting back up and building something better from the wreckage. The Medical Valley delegation brought news of the frontier, other packs recovering from the superfreeze, syndicate operations being disrupted, the slow rebuilding of civilization in a world that had nearly frozen to death. And they brought something else. Recognition. The Frontier Council has voted, their leader said formally. Thorn Ridge Pack is hereby elevated to Guardian Pack status, with all rights and responsibilities that entails. Guardian Pack, the highest honor the Frontier could bestow, protectors of the weak, enforcers of justice, the standard by which others were measured. We don't deserve that, Rowan said immediately. You survived the worst super freeze in recorded history with minimal casualties. You exposed and eliminated a syndicate conspiracy. You defeated raiders while exhausted from crisis. You rebuilt your leadership structure to prevent future corruption. The delegate smiled. If that doesn't earn Guardian status, nothing does. Rowan looked at her council, Marcus nodding, Sarah smiling, Kale watching her with something like pride. Even Kyle, usually stoic, showed a hint of satisfaction. Then we accept, she said, with gratitude and humility, and with the understanding that this is a beginning, not an ending. That's the right attitude. Guardian Packs don't rest on their achievements. They use them as fuel for future service. The celebrations continued late into the night. Rowan eventually escaped to the observation platform again, needing a moment of quiet. Kale found her there, as she somehow knew he would. Guardian Pack, he said. That's significant. That's pressure. You'll handle it. Will I? Rowan looked out at the frontier, the endless wilderness that had tried so hard to kill them and failed. Some days I still feel like the analyst everyone ignored, the paranoid woman shouting warnings nobody wanted to hear. The difference is now they listen, only because I was right. What happens when I'm wrong? You'll be wrong, you'll own it, and you'll fix it, same as you've done with everything else. Kale moved to stand beside her. Being a leader doesn't mean being perfect. It means being honest about your imperfections and pushing forward anyway. When did you become wise? I've always been wise. You just never asked. Rowan laughed. Fair point. They stood together, two survivors watching the frontier night. Above them, stars broke through the clouds for the first time in months. Clear skies. Cold, but not killing. The world remembering how to be livable. I'm glad you came back, Rowan said quietly. I'm glad you gave me something worth coming back to. What happens now? We just keep building? Keep growing? Keep trying to make the frontier a little less lethal? That's exactly what we do. One day at a time, one decision at a time, one saved life at a time. Kyle paused. It's not glamorous, but it's worth doing. Yeah, Rowan agreed. It is. Below them, the stronghold settled into night. Fires banked, guards rotating shifts, children being tucked into warm beds by parents who'd nearly lost them to the cold. Life. Continuing. Thriving. All because one stubborn woman had refused to accept that disaster was inevitable, that warning should be ignored, that survival meant abandoning the weak. Rowan Vance had been right about the super freeze, but more importantly, she'd been right about something deeper. That strength wasn't about ruling through fear or culling the vulnerable. It was about building systems that protected everyone, even when that was harder than the alternative, especially when it was harder. Come on, Kale said, breaking the comfortable silence. Council meeting in the morning. You should sleep. In a minute. I just want to stand here and remember what we survived. And what you built from it. What we built. All of us. Fine. What we built. He smiled. But you're still the one who made it possible. Rowan let herself accept that. Not with pride or arrogance, but with quiet satisfaction. She'd done something that mattered, changed lives, saved people who'd given up on themselves. That was enough. More than enough. As she turned to head inside, a wolf howled in the distant wilderness, the sound carrying across the frozen landscape like a promise. Life enduring, persisting, thriving against all odds. The frontier would always be harsh, would always test those who called it home, would always demand strength, courage, and the willingness to make impossible choices. But it wouldn't break them, not today, not ever. Because Thornridge Pack had learned the most important lesson the frontier could teach, that survival wasn't about being the strongest or the most ruthless. It was about being the most stubborn, the most loyal, and the most willing to stand up when everything said you should stay down. Rowan Vance had been cast aside, imprisoned, left to die. And she'd come back stronger, bringing salvation in her wake. The pack that had scorned her now called her Alpha. The people who'd ignored her warnings now hung on her every word. The woman they'd tried to destroy had become the foundation on which they rebuilt their world. That wasn't revenge, that was justice. And deep in the frozen frontier, in a stronghold that had survived the impossible, a new order rose from the ice, forged in betrayal, tested by catastrophe, and sealed by the courage of someone who'd refused to let anyone die alone. The super freeze had ended, but the legend of Rowan Vance, the Alpha who walked through hell and brought everyone home, was just beginning.